Hello, welcome to Spotlight, the official podcast of GRAPPL. I'm Benno.
And I'm JP.
And it's all changed compared to last week, JP. It was you, Gareth, and Matty holding down the fort of my absence. Great job that you lads did last week. I was in the chat, mothering yous and joining in the chat and just arguing with Matty via YouTube chat rather than on the show itself. It was a very different experience last week. Glad to be in the hot seat here. As Matty did join us for the pre-show, but he's got a lot going on. He's got Vegas next week. Plus, we're going to spend 2 hours talking about AEW. So we don't have him on the main show this week. We don't have Gareth either. So it's just me and you, mates, like old times, or like every weekend show, pretty much. But bit of both.
Pretty much, like it is. Yeah, it's an interesting one for this, isn't it? Because we haven't really had a chance to kind of speak about it as much today. But it's I mean, mate, I will say from you missing last week, it's terrifying hosting. And I honestly to God, it finds it at, I shit myself almost like each and every time, like in regards to like kind of hosting. I find it terrifying, mate.
I was worried about today because fucking like Facebook went down today, didn't it? So like me and JP and Joe back in the day, I think started like a Spotlight Facebook messenger group, which is now kind of ended up just being the way we all communicate, including Gareth and Matty as well. So yeah, Facebook going down kind of fucked us today. I didn't know how to get in touch with you. I ended up loading up WhatsApp and going, oh yeah, I've got JP's number, and I couldn't help myself. I was scrolling through the chat, like the odd message, like we'd have back and forth, and it would be like 2020, and then it'd be like 2019, and then it'd be like a missed call in the middle of the night, presumably somewhere in Germany. And then my favourite one was I think it read something like "Get Daisuke a pint, will you, lad?" Which was me texting you to get Daisuke Sakamoto a pint while we were in Germany. Timely actually with Carrot being up this weekend. It was a different world 2019, JP. I don't know why I chose WhatsApp to deliver that message to you, but you did buy the big man a pint, so it worked out well.
It did. Well, in the end, he didn't understand the concept of bonds. He didn't know what was going on with the whole bond system, and it's just like, mate, I'll get this. And he was very, very nice. Honestly, he's just like, I was in a bigger form then. I was a bigger lad at that point, and he was like fucking twice the width of me. I've never seen someone like that in my life. But a lovely fella. Even when we would stood up there on the balcony, and we'd be like stood near him, and he'd happily be sat there watching Ambition. God love him, not a care in the world, loving that part of Germany. Happy days. Like honestly, it brought me back when you sent that message because I can remember just turning around, looking up at you, and you're like, "Go on."
This is what happens. I'm surprised. Like as Andy Quilden said on Twitter today, what would we have all done if Facebook didn't come back up? Would have had to text you probably if WhatsApp went down as well. But no, as Simon said in the chat, they did a cracking job hosting the show last week, JP, and obviously today with it just being me and you, we're going to dive into a big AEW Revolution review in a second. But before we do, it's the start of a month and there's a lot going on, so we do need to run down what we've got going on. We did just finish Dealer's Choice month. I missed Gareth making his big announcement on the show. We recorded the Cody AEW Nightmare. That's what we titled it. Show over the weekend to wrap that month off. Thought that was a cracking choice by Gareth, and definitely timely going into the WrestleMania period for people to listen back to that one.
Oh, absolutely. Almost feels timely as well. We're doing an AEW pay-per-view at the same time. That's the kind of beauty of doing a show.
No, we ran into the pay-per-view. Like, if there's any of the pre-show I didn't see, it's because we were still recording. Because we're great at scheduling.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was, it was fantastic to do. Dangerously contemporary. Like, you think of, like, where Dealer's Choice has kind of gone. Like, we've gone from, like, kind of, you've taken us from, like, almost, like, 1980s with Big Match Jim, the Ultimate Mixtape, into When Worlds Collide, into Hollywood Rock, which was very prescient as well. I say When Worlds Collide is because FansticaMania is coming over to the UK as well at the same time. Jim Hellwig, linked to Sting, talking about this week, and then obviously we got Cody coming up WrestleMania season. So in some weird way that each of like the choices, which I mean, fantastic, but my God, what a wild range of shows we've done over the last month. And the Cody one was a great way of topping everything off.
honestly, going back to that period, it was like, fuck me, but when SCU were over, remember when that was a thing? Like, it was just, or even just like the early, like, that mystery of what AEW was going to be, not knowing, knowing what the logo looked like, but not knowing what any of the sets were going to look like, not knowing what any of the, the commentators were definitely going to be, or just generally what the vibe of the promotion was going to be. So yeah, it was a fun period to go back on. Spoiler, definitely there's a bit of a sliding quality as far as at least Cody's end of what he got up to in AEW during that period. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. Half a decade ago, unbelievably, was a lot of that podcast that we covered. So yeah, go back and see some recent history as we mentioned. But yeah, of course, we have got March coming up. A million things on the docket for patrons this month. Usual live spotlight, live weekend show, which you can also get as a YouTube member. Low price of $3.99 will get you just the live spotlight and live weekend show links for a usually a Tuesday and a Friday, depending on how we're feeling on a given week. And you can go back and watch the replays of those shows as well. But yeah, that'll be on. Obviously the next episode of Retro with Matty and Garrett. Despite Matty being away this month, there will be that in the docket. And yeah, as far as the big Patreon shows coming up this month, we can reveal we are going to be doing firstly Eddie. Well, or they might be a little bit different than this, but we are going to have a big one coming up this weekend. But other than that, we're going to have Eddie Sideburn's King of the Mountain show. We don't know what he's going to go for. We'll have Eddie on at some point this one to let us know. We're going to have the return of... It's not Observe This. Is it Power Slam That? I'm not sure what we're calling that show at this point. We're going to be doing another Observe This Power Slam special after the success of the last one. This time, again, speaking of Dealer's Choice Month, revisiting that period that's near and dear to your heart, JP. Around the time of when Worlds Collide, we're going to be looking at I think it's March, January, but really it's the December 1994 episode issue 6 of Power Slam. That's the last issue in that Power Slam yearbook that they put out this year. It's got the first PS50 in it, hasn't it, as well? All kinds of year-end stuff. So that's always a fun trip down memory lane. We'll have JP.
Oh, mate, it's brilliant. I don't want to spoil anything in there, but I was looking at PS50 and I was like, fucking hell. That's just a show in and of itself that we just rent down the list. Where were all these people in 1994? You'll absolutely love it. It's an absolute... just having pulled it out again, the old Power Slam annual that viewers might be able to see before the screen. Like, you can't because of the pixelated screen with Sting's lads in there. But it's absolutely cracking. But it also contains the Steve Austin interview, which is like kind of like a famous thing within kind of like Power Slam folklore on that. So yeah, I'm sure, and I can't see how we won't be like kicking off about Stately Wayne Manor and just going, what was that about? What was that? Or that page of stuff I just read. So yeah, should be absolutely fascinating. So yeah, I can't wait for that as well.
Definitely, yeah. I think we enjoy doing we'll still be going back and doing all the observers as well. But yeah, I think the Power Slam version of that definitely struck a chord with everybody. So yeah, we'll be reviewing that. If you haven't got the Power Slam yearbook, get it, and you can read the mag before we leaf through it on that show. We'll also have a patron special, Ask GRAPPL, coming up. If you enjoy the Christmas show, this one will be patrons and YouTube members only. So yeah, we're getting some big questions in. And the big headline show of March, JP, and it is related to the big lads behind you, and it feels like an obvious pick considering what we're about to talk about on this show. We will be doing a Sting mixtape by popular demand, going back and looking at the career of one Steve Borden through the years. Mixtape, not deep cut, so we're going to be picking out. It's one of the, as is typical for us, there's going to be, I'm currently putting the list together. It should be officially ready for release tomorrow, but it's looking right now like a couple of Ric Flair matches in there. Cactus Jack and Vader we've got in there. A bit of a Crow Sting after that, the Hogan match. DDP matches, which I've got a real close tie to my heart. Bit of TNA in there that we've had a couple of people recommend, and finish off with some, unfortunately, that one of the two WWE matches probably in the and we'll pick a modern AEW match as well. But yeah, so cover the entire wrestling world, covering Sting. Feels time we've got to be done.
Oh, yeah, it has to be done. I'm amazed we've gone this long, but obviously it's like the timing's absolutely perfect. I've also sent a couple of matches of him from Japan. Cross just to sort of
that'll be in the sickos. Oh, the sickos is going to be longer than the main playlist here. Like Matty's already sent me over suggestions for a Vampiro match from late WCW. That'll be in there somewhere. A lot of Luger in the sickos.
You've got to have Ian in there.
Yeah, been a great mood. Yeah, there's been some shouts for there's a Regal match that a couple of people have actually mentioned in Discord. Cyber mentions there in the live chat as well. Maybe we'll take it under advisory. But if you want to get your suggestions in, Patreon section of the Discord is popping today with people. A couple of shouts for apparently a match he had in 2011 in TNA with Hogan. I feel like I've only ever seen clips of that, or at least the angle after it. I don't think I've ever actually seen the full match. That might make the Sickos extended cut of that mixtape. None of that rings any bells for you, JP.
Is that Hogan pissing blood? I want to say it's like
11, yeah.
Yeah, he absolutely is pissing blood and he turns face at the end, which is classic Terry.
I remember that bit. Yeah, turning on what was the group called? Immortal? Was that his group at the
Immortal?
Time? Yeah,
Immortal? Yeah. I sometimes getting confused with the other one that was Fortune, but that was AJ Styles and Bobby Roode. I don't know why. Even though
TNA Stables.
Yeah, that's TNA Stables for you. Yeah. But
there we
go. Really looking forward to that, mate. That looks like it's just gonna be brilliant. Really,
we'll try
really
our best. Try our best not to go into a sidebar of TNA Stables or just TNA in general, but I think we'll be doing a lot of stop-offs in different parts of wrestling history for that one. So yeah, you can get all that over at patreon.com/grapple or by becoming a YouTube member as well. And like I say, get Spotlight, Weekend Show, the Midweek News Dump, all kinds of bonus stuff on there. And obviously the next episode of Time will be coming up pretty soon as well. So plenty going on, even in a release over on the Patreon. But on that note, JP, speaking of Sting, we should get into our main subject this week. And yeah, we've got some news and notes to get into at the end, but thought we'd start hot and dive into the big review, JP, which is Revolution from Sunday night and Sting's retirement and everything involved. Feels like there's been several days worth of news coming out of the pay-per-view at the weekend as well to get into too. But yeah, I think there's obviously a very obvious place to start as far as the content goes of Revolution. But got to ask firstly, JP, I'm guessing you weren't up late watching the 4-hour epic with us there. I know you weren't because you weren't on the Triller stream that I was having some trouble logging into on Sunday night. But yeah, but you manage to get this rewatch today.
I did. I have to confess, I haven't seen all of the pre-show, but like it was really funny because I saw, like, obviously it was on the Sunday. Monday was just like a bonkers day at work, so there was watching some of it on the way to work, like kind of all spoiler free. So I have to go kind of almost just like in a complete like social media lockdown because it'll turn up everywhere. So it's like, okay, I don't want this ruining me. I want to see how the Sting entrance looks and the rest of it. Obviously, Arsenal were playing on Monday night, which I had to watch, particularly when they're in caning arse form like they are at the minute. Like it's like kind of must see telly. And then I found myself like last night, like Vicky had fallen asleep and I was like, let's get the old Triller on there. And then I fell asleep through a bit of it. So it's like gone. I've like seen it in two halves. I saw like the second half of it today to get round to see it. Which hasn't kind of like clouded my thoughts on the show as much as anything else. It's not because it was a drag. It was just because there was just other stuff kind of fitting in. But yeah, I don't think I could do you, mate. Which is, you had food in. You watched the whole. We recorded and you watched the whole bloody thing. It's incredible.
Tapped out during the press conference this time. I couldn't get through. I got through the Sting bit and then I was done. Couldn't get through Tony Khan telling old war stories, but we should get into it. Yeah, like I say, watched it live, very much enjoyed it. The chat was popping over on the Discord, and yeah, we previewed it on Friday, JP. Definitely a daunting card going in, but I don't know, start with overall thoughts. What did you make of it? For me, I'd say it was, for good and bad, an AEW pay-per-view, and for that reason, it was funny. It reminded me that, like, I'm not so sure there's ever going to be such a thing as a perfect AEW show, because I've absolutely got some negatives to get into with this show. I've overwhelmingly got positives, but is that not true of every great AEW pay-per-view we've ever watched? Like, I feel like I almost felt like if the TV the last while has been a bit of a reset, this felt like a bit of a reset pay-per-view wise. Was it too long? Probably. Was there at least a match that should have been cut there? Well, as you said on the preview show and you called it, yeah, probably, so that we can get Sting's farewell speech in. It might have been something in there, maybe the scramble match that could have gone. Yes. Were there a couple of pacing issues there? Were there a couple of lulls through the match? Also, yes. But did it give me maybe 3 of what are probably going to my favorite matches this year? Yes. Did it give me a complete variety show where the 3 matches that I loved on this show are 3 completely different matches and you go further down the card? That's also a yes. And there's a lot of talk at AWJP of the feeling. Did it give me the feeling of this being like a big time AEW pay-per-view? I'd also say yes. So to throw to you on your thoughts, JP, like I think almost it being imperfect might be what I liked about it. And it might have been what made me feel like this is the excessive AEW that we kind of grew to love and maybe half complain about, going back in years past. And I was kind of glad it was back. For the most part, I love the show.
I think that's really where I am for this. I think this is like when it was okay. There are shows where I've seen better matches, kind of like overall, but like you say, for the whole variety show aspect, and that's the strange thing about watching this in 2 halves, is you see like the kind of like wild variety of matches. It's almost like I watched like up to like I want to say it was like the end of the tag match, and that was like almost like a kind of like a break for me. So I had time to kind of compress in there. It's just thinking about the amount of stuff on this card that was at least very good. And you're kind of going, well, there's at least like 4 or 5 matches. That's not to be sniffed at. We've just reviewed a show in When Worlds Collide, which, being spoken about in terms of being like one of the great shows of all time. And then you go back and watch it and you think, okay, you can see all the kind of the various issues with it. For this, like you say, there's the issue in terms of length is always going to kind of be there, but that's why I can't kind of watch it live. But I completely get the criticism of that as well. I have to say that there was at least the thing that I think I felt more upbeat about was at least it felt like there was like kind of directions that were in place. I think that's the only thing. And I think this one, because it ended on such a kind of like good, happy feeling, I think in the main, although I would have been livid if I'd been watching the show and I'd seen Sting's promo get kind of cut in half at the time, I'd have absolutely fucking kicked off. And I was somewhat astonished when that ended up happening on the feed without knowing any spoilers of anything else, and then managing to kind of having to go to YouTube to watch the rest of his speech. You just think, like, that's just basic shit. Like you say, for good or for bad, these shows are kind of messes for what AEW produce, but like you can't argue that there's no company in ring that I don't think comes like kind of really close to them on like a big scale, like at all.
It just, I'd be thinking about the theory of it, like the amount of times we came on here in a show like this and gone, it was 2 blokes and too long. But if I ask myself honestly, did I want it to be shorter? I mean, maybe other people would say yes. I'm not sure I did. And also the better question for me is like, if they were shorter and tighter, would these excesses also be allowed to exist, if you know what I mean? Like the Tony Khan's brain being such a mess that he has to put together these super cards mean you get a card where like another promoter guy go, we don't need Kingston Danielson for that show, let's not do that, let's do a 6-man with FTR instead. Or another promoter might be, we don't need to do Opsreay Takeshita on no notice when we've got all these other well-built matches. Let's drop that out. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's almost by design. And like this, maybe I think we probably should continue to hold AEW to a high standard as we always have. But that perfection of like a 100% perfect AEW card probably doesn't exist, does it? I think this is probably as good as it gets. And I don't know if that's damn overfaint praise, but like again, I enjoyed it. Warts and all, I enjoyed it for its faults. There are, as Chris Elliott says in the chat, there are low points, and he pretty much nails the ones that I'm probably going to go in on during the show. That, of course, to give honest analysis, we've got to do. And there was a low point that I just throw it out early, like the 3-way world title match. So that under-delivered, like that was another low point for me that I'm sure I'm gonna criticize, and that might have been a victim of the way this card was structured and the focus and time that was given to other things as well. But yeah, on the other hand, it's maybe why I enjoyed it too.
I think, if you look at this and you say to yourself, okay, they've got this other pay-per-view coming up in what, sort of 7 weeks time. Is there
That might
stuff that
change
could have been held off? Like,
Mm.
that's like kind of like an interesting effect. Could you have held off stuff for that? But I think this being like kind of what it was, and it was my fear kind of going into it, is like, okay, is there just not too much on this? There's stuff on here that doesn't need to exist. I mean, that's he feels determined to just show off the roster he has, which means means you end up with the kind of comedy excess stuff, because it's just like, look, and here's some big blokes, and here's Chris Jericho, and here's a guy from CMLL who is in and gone, and it's just all wacky for all of it. And it's kind of like, it felt like quite hard to kind of comprehend, really, because at least this show, and I would say like the crowd and stuff like that massively helped for this. There was like a really good energy throughout the show. And I think that's like, even though there were lulls, and even though the crowd was, at points, some stuff didn't really deliver, but I think the crowd are more than entitled to express their opinion on that, to stir up a debate that was going on like a week ago. But yeah, I think in the main, like, again, it's hard not to go to like that kind of main event. How do you, people leaving the place just going absolutely fucking batshit at that main event and stuff, and then you look at the other stuff on the card, and there's enough stuff to support it for it to go up in definitely the higher echelon of AEW pay-per-views.
Well, let's get into it then. You mentioned the main event. We should probably start there, and then we'll work our way through the rest of the cards. What did you think of the show? Was it a big send off for Sting in the end? Now that we got there, I mean, that was another reason I came out of the show so positive. JP, it was a show that gave me a warm, fuzzy feeling. Like, can you think of a show? And again, for its faults, which we will bring up on the show week to week. We are not, I think most people listen to this know, we're not an AEW Homer podcast. Matty doesn't necessarily know that, but it's the truth. We will criticize them when it's warranted. This wouldn't happen in any other wrestling company. Like, Sting getting the at least I suppose Western wrestling companies, but then we also saw what happened to a Carter in New Japan. Different set of circumstances, but but you might be more like, similar to like the Muta retirement last year. There are equivalents when you talk about Japanese wrestling, but at least in American wrestling, I can't recall seeing something like it. Like, as far as like honoring somebody and giving somebody the send off that they deserve, going out winning as well, which obviously we can get into, but going out like the hero that he is, going out on his own merits, being booked overwhelmingly, strongly across his entire run. There's an argument there for Sting being one of the best booked wrestlers in wrestling history, at least just within the. He's also one of the worst booked wrestlers in wrestling history when you look at some of the other promotions, which we're going to be doing at the weekend. But like, when you look at his AEW run, I can't think of a foot wrong that they put with Sting, and it went right up into this. Like, I thought this was. We had conversations on the weekend show, JP. It was the title of the YouTube clickbait thumbnail. Will Sting lose? Should Sting lose? Can Sting lose? We found out, actually, I think AEW made the right call on that as well, for me, and they gave him the perfect ending to what was the perfect run. I thought this was just, we can get into the match itself as well, but beyond classy, and one of the happier, just smile on your face moments, like, for, I think every wrestling fan could say that watched this, including Pat McAfee, but we'll get into that too.
Yeah. That was the beautiful thing about this, is like watching every aspect of that main event, like with a massive smile on my face. And obviously for video viewers, you can see as the moment it was the realization of like, okay, outcome surfacing. I was expecting something like this. I was hoping the lads were going to get involved, and my God, they over deliver for me for what I kind of wanted. Like, one of them coming out as Wolfpack Sting and the other one as Surfer Sting. I was like, immediately I was just like, okay, I'm just predetermined to love every aspect of it. It is so unusual. And Liam says it could have been a chess man salute as well. He might have been going completely.
One looked more like him than the other, because because I was looking for images for the Sting mixtape we're going to be doing at the weekend, and I came across Sting in that exact outfit that he's got his larger son wearing. My God, is that the same human? Like, honestly, when he walked out, I was like, I did the same thing everybody else did. Like, is that Sting? And then you realize it's not. And he's a bit wider, he's a bit bulky, like, for it. You look at Sting during the period when he wore that outfit, that Sting looked like that. He looked bulky. He's literally his twin. Now, younger brother, I think, on the other side, not so much. No. Bit too slimline probably to pull it off. And also, that red singlet feels like, I think our mate Ian Andrew Dice Clay said on Twitter, it's like the Sting Awake hit. I'm not sure that one's canon. I don't remember seeing Sting in an all red singlet in WCW in the mid to late 90s. Sorry, I maybe wore it once or twice, but it wasn't a known Sting look, but close enough.
He couldn't have done like Joker Sting. That's the problem with it. Like, really, isn't it? It's like, what other direction could he go in?
Dark hair, surfer Sting.
Yeah, he could have done.
The problem
is this version of Sting is Crow Sting. It's just like older Crow Sting, really. It's but it's the same character effectively. I just, in some ways, I want to see I would love to have seen these three team up against LA Park and his two lads as well. That's a trios match that should have happened in there as well at the same time. And I think from that moment of them kind of like appearing, it was just like kind of very apparent like what this kind of match was going to end up being. And if you again, I bring this point up a lot. The idea that a 64-year-old man is come to the end of his 3.5-year run, like 2020 during the pandemic, he's there. 3.5-year run would normally send me absolutely batshit, never losing at any stage along the way. But I'm perfectly fine with it because what he offered as much as anything else was like, because effectively he was like Terry Funk. That's really what his role was in this as much. And, and quite often you do often hear the comparisons with like Chris Jericho and Terry Funk. But in some ways, this felt like more like a kind of like Terry Funk. It was the idea that I think a lot of the time that like these younger wrestlers were having this kind of mad confrontation with this guy who was like a massive star, but he was doing shit for them. Like he was actually doing, this isn't like kind of like no selling and the rest. It's not like what Billy Gunn does in matches where he effectively kind of like no sell. Sting's doing batshit stuff and you're kind of in there with him and it instantly becomes memorable. And it's not like they put the world title on him like Noah did with Muta or anything like that. They kind of booked him, like you say, in exactly the right way. He felt like a special attraction who inexplicably seemed to get more and more violent as he went along, which was a direction that none of us really saw coming because the bloke was supposed to retire. And I think it's the idea that we completely believe the retirement. Like there's like the idea of him appearing on TV in some sort of like kind of like guest appearance. I'm fine with that, but he's not wrestling another. I think he's the kind of guy I go, well, this is as good as it gets. He's got his money. Like this is as good a send off as he's ever going to get. As fucking and he goes out having had like this run of like really, if nothing else, completely memorable matches. And this will probably end up doing like near to the CM Punk pay-per-view level. Like at this stage, I think that's what like numbers wise, this is going to be like in their top 3 at the very least. Wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being number 1, just because I think did such a job with it. And you look at the house they drew for this as well. But yeah, as Andy says in the chat, like no one saw New Jack Sting coming, but like here we are, and I'm like completely fucking loved it. Like this is just fucking batshit, wasn't it? From beginning to end.
It was just fun, and I think everyone played their role perfectly. Like I say, right down to Sting's two sons, as noted in the chat. Yeah, the Stinger splashes. They were both a little bit. They jumped a little bit early for me. They were definitely putting the effort in as far as the leap goes. It was like look, a younger.
Ron in Japan would have ironed out those kinks, mate. But that's another world, isn't it? Yeah.
Felt like they nailed it for the most part. They disappeared at one point. I wasn't quite sure where they went, but like they fit their role, so it was perfect casting to kind of have them do that. Everyone wondered about about that though. What was the presentation going to be when he comes out? Were they going to have like a karaoke singer doing Man Cold Sting? I would have enjoyed that. But this version was great, and obviously having Seek and Destroy as the music, as we all heard it all in, was just absolutely perfect as well. So that worked great. And then the match itself, it was a joy to watch. Like, was it narratively perfect? No. You know, there were even like, you might expect me to, gotta talk about like the glass spots, like to be someone who loved it. In the moment, I was kind of thinking, I'm not sure you needed this for Sting's last match. But Darby's going to Darby, innit? And it is what it is. And it did add to the story that they told. Darby took one of the fucking, as we knew he would do, the craziest bumps ever would have imagined him taking. Down to the point where even when they were setting it up and they were putting the glass on the two chairs, like those chairs were fucking close together. That did not look like it was going to be a good line in either way. But I suppose once you're coming off a ladder that high, it's not going to end well either way. So it doesn't really matter at that point. But fuck me, that was rough. It was one of the worst. Like the state of his back afterwards was just, even for me as someone who can take a death match, that was fucking rough. But it did add to the story because it meant he was then on the outside, and then Sting, superhero as he has kind of been throughout his career, is fighting underneath against the two baddies who, again, for their parts, did their job perfectly as well. I thought the Young Bucks were as good as I've seen them, at least in recent vintage, when it comes to them in AEW. Like, they played the role they needed to play absolutely perfectly. I've had misgivings about some of the jokier stuff that they continue to do under this act, but it was pretty much all business, and they were the perfect foils in the end. For every conversation we had about it, including on the weekend show about whether Sting should win or not, they were great and lost nothing by losing either, because they knew their role. They knew their role was to be the others in the match with Sting. Their day will come, and I'm sure they'll be able to, get the belts again under some kind of, cheap way, and they can, we can lean back on the fact that, they if anything, it adds to the heat, I suppose, that they didn't beat Sting and Darby. So I thought that was perfect too. And once Darby got back into the match, really enjoyed, everything with him and Sting. Sting going through the glass himself was fucking terrifying. But again, he's a fucking nutter at this point in his career, so he's going to do it. I wonder what, the Alparts, Lex Luger and the lads in the front row made of that one. I wonder what Ric Flair was making of it. Speaking of the match being imperfect, didn't love the Ric Flair bits, but as far as like giving Sting like a big bells and whistles match with drama, story, memorable spots, a nice happy ending, it ticked every single box as a match as well. So honestly, I'm obviously not going 5 stars on it, but almost from an emotional point of view, I kind of wanted to at the end of it, because it left me satisfied and it gave me everything I wanted out of a final Sting match.
It's completely cathartic, whether you're an old, like, for older wrestling fans and newer wrestling fans. Well, obviously some older wrestling fans won't be happy with all the glass stuff as well, but you had these kind of like almost, I mean, Ricky Steamboat getting involved. Like, Ricky Steamboat and Sting don't have necessarily that kind of like the history of a Flair and Sting, but Ricky Steamboat can deliver bumps, do bumps and stuff like that, and generally he's better. So it felt like that was of all the guys to kind of have out there at ringside, he was a guy that kind of made sense in that way. And like I said, I didn't like the Flair stuff, but thinking about this, like, what else could they do with a match like this? It's not going to get kind of match of the night if you have a standard tag match in there. You have to go kind of like balls to the wall for this to kind of stand out. It's Sting, who has got increasingly more and more kind of like risk taking, like I say, as he's just been channeling fucking New Jack.
This was the peak of it,
and this was really the peak of it. And this was to the extent that they could go, and it worked, and it worked for the audience. Like you say, like, this is like, and the Bucks, I've given them absolute pelters for what feels like a couple of years now at this point. Fair fucking play to them. And there's a way of playing it into this where they're even more pissed off and actually quite brutal. Like, if they go down that route with this, having lost this match, then that's something else that you can kind of take from it, because you don't have to deal with kind of Sting like being like there as well. It's like there is a life beyond this storyline for them that can work for the Bucks as well. I think as well, dare I say it, looking back in it in terms of a tournament for the tag belts, I think there's a division that's kind of needed a reset, really has. And this is a way of doing that, isn't it? It kind of like, ticks it, as long as they don't rush into it, which is what I'll probably suspect will happen. But you'd imagine there'll be like a series of tournament matches going on across Dynamite and Collision with the new champions having the match at the Dynasty show. It's whether or not is like, and I think that's, but I don't want to take away from kind of necessarily like the Sting talk for it, but a situation that I wouldn't have been entirely happy with. But in the end, this has come up. And I suppose we were talking about like a similar kind of context with the Ospreay Oku match for Rev Pro. Had those similar kind of stakes. We mentioned this on the weekend show as well at the same time. And this went the other way of having the guy who was leaving kind of stay as champion. And I was also fine with that because it's how you present it. That crowd, they were so fucking like Sting crazy.
Couldn't have done any other result on the night.
Yeah, couldn't have done anything else. Yeah. Like ultimately it should be you want people to come away from pay-per-views happy. Not every pay-per-view is going to have that cathartic good guy ending. But in the main, for something like this guy is someone who is a genuine legend. It's funny seeing like kind of what people have said about it. I know we're going to talk about this on the mixtape as well. Like he's probably a guy who, like, if you look at it from a business perspective, not as big of a draw in some ways as kind of he could have been, or like an inconsistent draw is always what's been kind of like labeled.
It was to be in the 90s though. I want to go over that. Yeah. I want to go over whether that's true or not. It'd be hard to be a fucking draw in that company in that, but we could talk about that. I was always a Sting for Hall of Fame voter, so.
Absolutely. That isn't in doubt at all. And I think, like, in terms of top 10 North American wrestlers, I think it's like a really good case for him to be kind of like included in there as well. And these are runs that kind of, this run in particular has kind of added to it because it's given it that wonderful kind of exclamation point. This was like a bloated, mad match because it had to be given the circumstances. But I fucking love this. Rating wise, I'd go four stars.
Yeah, I'd go 4 too.
Yeah.
It was what it should have been, what it needed to be, and what we all wanted it to be at the end of the day. Again, like the pay-per-view, didn't need to be perfect to be great. And that's exactly what it was. Chat saying there, as Andy said, yeah, Mox and Cesaro are set up to be, they could be tag champs at some point. There are teams, it's not the we just lost one, but it's not exactly the the stacked tag team division that we were promised at the start of AEW. Like I was kind of hoping, and again, this might get dated if it gets announced before we're finished recording, as it tends to happen. Some kind of Continental Classic for tag teams. I saw that getting mooted about. I think that was a conversation being had on our Discord over the last couple of days. I'd take that. That might be a nice way to reboot things. But it's not a problem at the end of the day. It doesn't matter. What mattered more was the night. What mattered more was giving Sting his moments. And yeah, absolutely loved it. It's like only negative for me was Ric Flair. As Simon says there, yeah, he did look like someone from the Open and a casualty. He looked fucking dead, just lying there, like he was scared. He was fucking rolling around in the glass, like he was scared to move too much before he cut himself. He shouldn't be out there. Like he shouldn't be getting involved in physical spots. I think that was another slight negative for me. I think they didn't do a perfect job at it was just funny because they brought out Flair and Steamboat. And then Flair and Steamboat didn't seem to know where to sit. It was like watching your granddad get lost, and the both of them were arguing over which chair to sit in. Meanwhile, we had a couple of other people in the front row. Apparently, it was Magnum TA. Apparently, there we had Lex Luger had got wheeled out, but they didn't really show him on camera. A couple of them were fiddling with the phones, trying to take pictures with Sting, bit like your dad zooming in, trying to tipping the glasses down to stare at the phone and take a photo. There was a lot of your dad stuff going on. It didn't make the legends look the most legendary. I would say. I think they could have done a better job of selling the people that were there, and that there were genuine big stars that passed there for Sting's big goodbye. But minor gripes outside of it. And same thing goes for the promo at the end. It would have been the cherry on top to let Sting at least finish his promo. I was very surprised the Triller feed didn't keep running. I would have thought even if the pay-per-view window is closed, I guess Tony Khan had already left Gorilla and was ready to go out there and hug Sting. So I guess no one was there to make the call to just let it run. I wish that had happened. I know the full clip's on YouTube, but we kind of lost the moment there. That would have been like the perfect ending to let Sting do a proper speech. But again, minor gripes, because I still came up with a gigantic smile on my face. I had that smile on my face at the presser afterwards when he came out and he was talking about our good mate Jim and how they were, what did he call them, two steroided up young boys back in the day. He said something like, and I got off steroids in 1990. He didn't. It's like, fucking hell, mate. He's dead, you know. Like, Jesus. Sting's got a bad word to say about anybody. Bring up Jim Hellwig. You get it. But I had just a big smile on my face watching that as well. Just hearing him just talk about, you know, how happy he is with Darby and how things have gone out. It was a joy, the entire thing.
Yeah. Very rarely do you get those kind of happy, cathartic moments, and this delivered that.
What did you think of Michael Cole bringing it up on commentary on Raw? I was, new WWE. Is it a friendly rivalry now? Probably not, because the second Pat McAfee tried to half say that he enjoyed the match. Michael Cole was it Gunther in the ring? Got right into like, oh well, Gunther's slapping a headlock on right now. Couldn't have moved on any quicker, because you know Pat McAfee's like, he probably would have gone on about how much he loves glass and wrestling and how we should be doing that. They cut him off before he was allowed to do that.
It was at the same time, the fact that they mentioned that's the kind of thing that they wouldn't have done, because that Sting run was all said like kind of a bust, like for the guy, like, and considering they never did the one match they should have fucking done because of Triple H and Vince.
Now you got to put him with Seth Rollins, mate. Just like you got to put Seth Rollins in your main WrestleMania tag match. I'll save that.
Not the Undertaker, no. Not the no. It's just ridiculous stuff. But I thought it was. I was going to say surprisingly mature for them. Like it was probably as mature as they kind of get about that type of stuff. So yeah, I was surprised that they mentioned it. But I was like, oh, okay, they're going to do that a lot. That's an interesting time. It's a very, like, you can tell that Vince isn't around.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't never be in a million years allowed to reference that.
But it's been nice to see all the love for Sting, both, you know, their other companies and just generally. And he's just someone you don't have a bad word to say about. So looking forward to diving into the mixtape and looking back on some of his career. But yeah, this match was up there with it for me as far as great Sting moments and great Sting matches, and definitely one I'm going to revisit in future. But we should talk the rest of the card. We'll work our way from the bottom back up to that main event. But like I say, pre-show I didn't see much of with us recording on the night. I did see Jay White say that he had a big something big coming up for the big business show, and then it turned out to be a match with Orange Cassidy. Cool. That sounds good. It'll be a good match, I'm sure it will. Outside of that, they had their multi-ban, and that's pretty much it. Chris Statlander, Willow Nightingale beat Julia Hart and Sky Blue. Didn't have any gigantic thoughts on that. Interesting wrestling has returned to the 0 hours though. I suppose you know, that's the way to do it if you're gonna sell your pay-per-view. Full hour. You haven't got enough matches on the pay-per-view. Why not throw some more on here?
Are they like an hour and a half, these pre-show ones, aren't they now at this point? Because it's like half an hour is basically the countdown show, and then they get into the kind of like at least the 2 matches, which is the optimum length for these things. I must confess, like you, I didn't watch them on there as well. I mean, I've kind of heard about them. Willie Max, I'm assuming like he's kind of signed with the company because they need another bloke in there as well. Just like kind of weird lineups, but I'm absolutely fine with this stuff being on like that's what your pre-shows are meant to do. They're meant to have a little bit of wrestling on there to kind of entice people like into the place. But yeah, but in the main, like kind of it's the usual show, isn't it?
Well, we started off the show. Started off quick, and the quick pace would continue through the night as Christian Cage went up against Daniel Garcia again on the weekend show. We talked much about whether this was going to be Danny's big moment. I was less sure. I kind of had a feeling they were going to have. Obviously, there's more legs in this Christian TNT title run. I presume something's coming up with conspicuous by his absence. Cope at some point with Christian, but I felt like there was a little bit of doubt there. I did think is Daniel Garcia going to get his his little moment from Tony Khan as pat on the back, but we should probably just be happy he's where he is at this point in AEW. He's in a much stronger position. Thought it was a decent match, if not spectacular, and I thought Garcia continued to look good. I think his gear looks a lot better than it did when he was in the JAS as well. And yeah, Christian's a perfect kind of mid-card champion heel to put him with someone like Garcia on the rise. What did you make of it?
If I'm going to rate this is like kind of a decent 3.5 star opener. It's like kind of does the job of what it, as soon as it came out, it did the job I kind of thought it would do. I probably was expecting like a bit more bells and whistles just because of the way that I thought that the direction they could go in this. And I thought saying on the weekend show, I thought there was a chance that Daniel Garcia could end up getting the belt because I thought there was going to be a whole series of interference. But really, in some ways, the interference was just kind of relatively straightforward, wasn't it? And it was like it was Matt Menard who ends up like kind of like coming out, and you have the kind of distractions. There was that one sort of close.
Is it coming?
That's it.
Why is he there? What's the like? It feels like It's like Chekhov's 2.0 member, and it like presumably like there must be a turn coming at some point because why else would because this match was building really well, and there were there was a lot of interfering spots, but they were well done. This was just like, and it kind of built up to this, and it built, the big babyface rally, comes out of nowhere, rallies, and kind of evens the odds. It's just a lot of effort to put in for Daddy Magic, isn't it? Like, it's almost like, I think I'd rather just Christian and Daniel Garcia had a match, and like that subplot wasn't part of it, because I can't see where else it's going other than like Daddy Magic turns on him on a rampage or something like that, because otherwise, why would you put the minutes and the hours into it?
And why would that be a feud you'd want to invest in? Or just make him the fucking manager. If that's the case, it's his mate who's there around at ringside because other people interfere in his matches. Okay. Kind of fine with it because he's there effectively as his hype man. He's not there to kind of like completely steal Daniel Garcia's heat or anything else. And this is really, again, this is the test of a Tony Khan kind of booking era. They've done this good job since the Continental Classic with Daniel Garcia in terms of the rehabilitation. Like, him getting that win on the last week of the Continental Classic, just to kind of come out of that with a bit of upward momentum. And they've done like a really good job. The TNT title is where he kind of should be aimed and focused. And he's someone I would say, dare I say, I kind of want this feud to carry on just in order for him to get like another kind of title shot, maybe at the next pay-per-view, where you can put it in more of a featured kind of like a higher profile place on the card. And I think that would be like I think a decent direction to go in, or at least kind of build up on a big episode of Dynamite, because I think he kind of would need it as much as anything else. Otherwise, it was like finish wise, it kind of falls into the sort of your standard Christian Cage stealing a victory type stuff. And I think I probably had in my head a whole lot of other stuff that was going to go on. But as a match, like I thought it was like kind of like good fun though.
Yeah. A lot of like I say, a lot of Wayne family shenanigans. I don't really know on Shayna Wayne. Like, I feel like that was a funny idea on like on the page. It was like, oh, won't it be very like Attitude Era wrestling to have the widowed wife turns heel and we got a new Vicky Guerrero on our hands or something like that. I can see the thinking behind it. In practice, it just looks weird. She's still there now, especially because they haven't gone the whole hog, and it's not like the pretending her and Christian in any kind of relationship. It's just Nick Wayne's mum just tags along with them when they come out now. And that's the thing. But as much as I enjoy the Christian shenanigans, you've got to give her a spot on top of giving Nick something to do, on top of having fucking Luchasaurus giving him something to do, which is given. Then you've got to give Daddy Magic something to do. It's like one of those ECW factions. She might just be one too many for me as far as like characters around. Or I say ECW factions. I just got off that Cody show. A Cody faction in AEW. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just an extra body that like I don't know. It was a funny idea for a one night punchline. I don't really see the legs in it past this. If anything, it's probably a negative for Nick Wayne as well. I think they maybe should move on from that at some point.
Yeah, it's a bit just incredible, isn't it? When you have Jason
exactly what I was
and Chastity and bloody
and all the rest of them.
Nicole Bass would be there, and you'd be like, why has Just Incredible got all these fucking people with him? It's a hell of a direction for Aldo Montoya. But yeah, I would just sooner, I know it sounds really bad, I'd sooner there's the whole angle just get that bit more sort of almost soap opera-y. Very risky way of saying it, but I would like to see like kind of over, like, I don't know, try a segment out about whether or not she says like Nick Wayne's rude to him or something. Don't speak to your father like that. I was expecting all manner of shit like that, and we haven't had any of that stuff really at all.
Yeah, they haven't gone far enough, and then also maybe they've gone too far. I don't. They haven't drawn the line at the right place for me. I just cut bait and get rid. But overall, still enjoy the Christian character, and I think Christian as TNT champion, at least himself, has got legs in it. We went from there, and I say went from there fucking quickly into the next match. We did stop for breath. We did have a nice little thing that they were doing through the night with Renee backstage and kind of hyping up the two men coming out. I kind of like that different production choice. And I said it on the night as well. I think as much as to the back is a TNAism that I don't love AEW employing. When it's been a heel win like that, you probably don't need to leave the camera on it for too long. You probably can afford to move on relatively quickly to Kingston and Bryan. But it's a packed show, so they did. And yeah, we had what was definitely among, for me, the three best matches of the night, even on the pre-show there for patrons. Matty was loving this. You wouldn't imagine it was his style, but absolutely was. And yeah, again, Gareth, another one. If we had Gareth here, I'm sure Gareth loved this one as well. Just yeah, perfect. As far as like you want like a personal issue settled in the ring with a story told within, with a bit of limb selling, bit of hard hitting. Fucking beautiful segment afterwards as well. Don't know if you've seen the clip that they put on Twitter and I believe the YouTube where they're both sat in the doctor's office afterwards, where Bryan is begrudgingly giving Kingston his respect and King's explaining why he needed it and why it was so important to him. That's a great little bell and whistle to put on the end of it. But that story they told in this match as well. I wasn't high on them adding this match to the show when they first started teasing this direction. I kind of felt like this feud was done. But as far as another chapter on it, I tweeted my words a little bit because I thought this was fantastic. Look, Kingston, as always, is great from fighting underneath. His selling was incredible. The attention to detail with the selling, right through to the post-match, as we said on the pre-show, was something to behold as well. I just thought he was brilliant in this. Danielson, I have misgivings about his character work sometimes as to consistently what he is on the shows, but in the moment when he has to be the dickhead who's going to be vicious and he's going to go after a body part and he's going to treat Eddie Kingston like he doesn't respect him, performing that, I don't think there's many better. And I thought he was brilliant in this as well. And this, if there weren't other matches coming up, this might have been my match of the night. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't think. In some ways, I'd wondered whether or not this was going to get completely lost in the shuffle, but it didn't. It ended up like I thought. In many ways, I wonder what the reaction would be if they'd kind of like opened the show with this, because I think in one ways, you're wondering with the benefit of hindsight, would that have almost been like kind of a better move to go for it? It was predictably. I don't know why. In some ways, I ever would have doubted it. Like I love Eddie Kingston, I love Bryan Danielson. They're both fucking brilliant. And there is a logic to this as well. Like, for example, with Danielson working over the right arm because, he does the Hurricane Punch and the rest of it. And it was like all of that stuff, like the kind of the logic to it. But at the same time, it had your kind of like your wonderful, like your strong style elements of a bit of shit kicking and taking the fucking punishment as well at the same time. I have to say as well, again, and I might kind of... why am I growing warmer to the idea of Nigel McGuinness on commentary during Bryan Danielson matches? I'm sure I'm going to regret saying this, but I mean, cheering on. Have you had enough of it now? You're done with that entirely.
I should be the poster boy for wanting that match. I don't want that match. Like,
I don't want a match at all.
Any truth to it? Like, yeah.
But I enjoy, for some reason, just the idea of just like this is the one person that the commentator, like this is the one kind of nominal heel at points that he can't stand and he won't like kind of try and big up at all in this. But yeah, this was definitely like this is definitely up there in terms of like top 3 matches of the night as well. I'm still ultimately confused about the Continental like kind of classic, the Continental Crown Championship as well for it. So I like dedicating it to Jun Akiyama, all of that kind of stuff I can kind of do without. In many ways, I almost want to see him having to try and defend 3 titles and just say, well, that's the price you've got to pay for holding all of these titles. You've got to kind of defend them. And with Danielson, I think we need to like that clarity of character that you mentioned. That is going to be a kind of an issue because part of the big storyline that we're going to be getting the rest of 2024 is this is meant to be his last active year as a professional wrestler. So therefore, we should be building up to a big kind of climactic events, which you kind of need him to be a face, don't you? For this to kind of work and moving beyond this kind of Blackpool Combat Club stuff. But if there's one wrestler in the world who can pull all this stuff off, it's him.
I think I'd say that, but with a caveat of like he almost pulls it off in the individual segments, but I don't. It's like the whole Blackpool Combat Club in general. I don't think anyone really believes it. I don't think anyone really wants to hate John Moxley. I don't think anybody really believes Bryan Danielson is a dickhead. Like as I mentioned, like I loved it so much, that segment that they put on the Twitter and YouTube of them sat there, and he's sympathetic as Bryan Danielson is to Eddie Kingston. Just the nice bloke in him just kind of beams off him. Do you know what I mean? The man who loves wrestling and loves to wrestle people like Eddie Kingston. Like they bring up like the history and stuff like that, and how like he was maybe holding on to the past too much. It's really good character stuff, but it's good character stuff for somebody who will probably want to cheer on the TV. And if I boo him, I'm probably just playing along. That is a continued issue, but again, in isolation, as far as like, you know, a tight, hard hitting, well thought match, like it still works in the moment. And yeah, as far as being the dickhead who would try and, you know, be the best in the world at literally taking somebody's limb away, that's the story Danielson told in the match, and it was great. And Kingston was great as well. And again, Kingston's another one. Talk about this feeling like a classic AEW pay-per-view. It wasn't that long ago Kingston wasn't in the mix at all. You know, I've got the same misgivings as you about the Continental title and all of that stuff, but like it's got him involved again, and he's, you know, a main character again, and he's got a spot in the pay-per-view again. And this match was one of the many reasons why I love this pay-per-view so much. What would you give it from a star rating point of view?
I'd probably go 4.25 for this.
I go 4.5, I think.
Yeah, I can see why 4.5. I might need to, like, again, I think with this, it's almost like in many ways because of its placement on the. I don't know if it's anything to do because we rushed so much from the first match straight into this one as well that maybe there's a part of me thinking, okay, perhaps if it had opened, or perhaps if it had been, where else could you put it on this card? That he would have got lost in the shuffle if you put it on later in there. But yeah, definitely like a really fucking good match and a really strong match.
Well, from there to another strong match, JP. Another match that absolutely needed to be on this match. The All-Star, in quotes, scramble match as Chris Jericho, Wardlow, Powerhouse Hobbs, Lance Archer, Hook, Brian Cage, Magnus, not that one. Although he's appealing in Rev Pro. We're going to be talking about that a bit later. And Dante Martin, also with a lot of cast of characters on the outside, including Jake Roberts, Prince Nana, Adam Cole still exists. He was knocking about. The lads went out there and had a match. Do we need to see anything more? Other than the fact that it was really fucking long. I don't want to spend as long talking about this as this match was. They got to where they wanted to get, which for some reason is putting Wardlow over and making him a number one contender in some form. I don't know, and I'm suspicious of why we're leaning in that direction. But yeah, as far as like matches like this, I've seen considerably better ones. As Andy says there in the chat, absolutely considerably better paced versions of this match, considerably more creative versions of this match. The meat segment gave me a bit of a laugh. Outside of that, it was a match, JP, and a match that just didn't really need to be there. I know they have the Face of the Revolution match most years in AEW, but didn't really feel like a tradition that needed to continue. Probably should have just cut bait, really, because really wasn't for me, this one.
Didn't need to be on it at all. If anything, this should have been like almost in an alternate universe. You think you'd have a series of matches where people try to qualify for this big match. It's going to happen for a number one contendership on an episode of Dynamite. I'd have been happier with that. Instead, it was just throwing shit against the wall for no real discernible reason other than to have, like, say, Wardlow as number one contender, which in and of itself, it's just like, all right, you try it. It does feel like the genie's well and truly out of the bottle with him, but if they're going to do it. But it felt like people like Hook, who we were kind of high on the match with Samoa Joe, and then he's kind of here. And I think the problem is with him and with like a Hobbs, it felt like a waste. It was like there had been some decent work with these guys, and they kind of like they were nowhere in this match at all. And like I say, it was just, there were some really horrible sloppy bits in there as well at the same time. Really was like, and it was just like a kind of like a mess of a match. And the whole time I'm there thinking, I really wish I didn't have to watch this, because there's other stuff on this show that I'd sooner see with a bit more time to it as well.
Well, we have got to get Jericho on the card, as Chris says there. Yeah, that was. He didn't cover himself in glory in this one. You mentioned some of those spots similar to Dynamite last week. Jericho feels very try-hard right now as far as trying to keep up with the young kids and do these creative matches. Couldn't be lower in his stock anymore. Getting involved in the muck, despite all the other stuff you can absolutely say about him. And yeah, that's the only that takes nothing on the match itself, more the people in it. Hook. I see a massive upside for him. I think most do. I'm not sure if that's realised. It's only one pay-per-view cycle, so it is what it is. Dante Martin was somebody stood out in the match I've got on my notes. It's like just someone who, I don't know, I kind of watch the match like, oh yeah, I remember him. They're going to keep trying with him, aren't they? I just don't ever see it with him. I think he's going to be a mid-level GCW type flyer guy who's slightly more athletic than some of those guys that you can name that do those types of matches. And he's never going to be a thing, I don't think. And yeah, Wardlow I feel the same way about. Like Wardlow, what doing that Cody show? I just think we were wrong. I don't think AEW failed him. I don't think the booking wasn't great either. It's a bit of 60 and 140 there. But I just think, and I said this on a weekend show a couple of weeks ago when I was on with Matty, there's just nothing there. I don't think. I think we were fooled into it. I think he played the role of Batista well, so we just attached those thoughts and feelings we all had about Batista to him. Like, oh yeah, he's going to rise up against MJF and then main event, job done. And none of us thought through, well, what happens the next day? Because at the next day, after the MJF stuff was over, I know MJF fucked it all over with his promo in LA, but like, I just don't think there was a next day for Wardlow. I think he's an okay big man. He's relatively good looking. I'm not feeling the praise, for these promos that he's doing. And I just don't really see the money in him outside of him being a heavy that's, on your roster in a lower mid-card spot, which is kind of what it is. But they're going to try again.
Yeah, they're going to try again. I just think the genie's out of the bottle. He's with yet another stable. He's not particularly hot. He's being kind of like forced into the mix.
Why is he in the stable? Do we know yet? Has anyone ever explained it?
No.
Like, when did that conversation happen? When did he decide to join? At what? Because the rest of them make sense as the post match, a post match or the next match. We'll reference we knew their history and stuff like that. All those just a weird attached bloke who's just looks kind of homeless and comes out in his pajama pants. Like, why is he? Yeah, why is he even there in the first place? I don't believe his motivation either. That's the other issue.
That's it. And I think that we've not seen anything like kind of promo wise to suggest that he's going to be like still at the kind of level that you'd want him to be for like kind of world title contender. If you wanted to do contender of the week, but like at this point, would you have him go over Samoa Joe? No, like that wouldn't be a call that I'd make at all. And so like, how are they going to heat him up? It's just like the idea of powerbomb symphonies and stuff that, again, that genie is out of the bottle. That's gone. So I don't know how you can end up doing like what they can end up doing with him. And I don't think he's got enough of a kind of depth of personality to kind of change aspects of his character. And I think these are the things that we are starting to see. So when you said earlier on, like, yeah, I think we got it wrong. It's just like, yeah, kind of think so. I think it was very much like a case of wrestling projection.
Well, on from there, not worth star rating that one. We had Orange Cassidy and
2 stars.
And Roger Strong's. Yeah, less than 2 for me. 1.5. There we go. Orange Cassidy, Roger Strong was up next. My internet shit the bed during this match. Managed to come back and rewatch it today. And it was the very good match I knew it was going to be. I did catch the post match. That's probably the most interesting talking point out of this, as Kyle O'Reilly came back and, as I said on the Discord, God love him. He's come back from a serious health issue, and it's fucking genuinely heartwarming to see him come back. It's great to see him thank the fans, and the fans react to him and stuff like that. Just brilliant to see him back on TV in any capacity. Feels like they sprung it on him though. I said on the Discord, he looked like the local drug dealer who rides around on a stolen bike. Like that's what he was dressed like. Like black. Can you imagine like a black North Face jacket on over the t-shirt and shorts combo we had going on? Black pair of trainees. Trader socks on. Riding around on his stolen BMX, slightly ruffled hair. He didn't look like he was told that he was going to be on TV on that night. Maybe that's a nice part of the story, though. That's a nice surprise, you know. They sprung on him and threw him out there, but yeah, he did definitely look like a few of the lads I've seen knocking around Liverpool 8, but yeah, didn't. When watching it back, so the second time I watched, kept the post match on again. I did wonder, like, if he was coming out to not join the stable, why did he come out at all? That's just one of those wrestling things, isn't it? He came out to not take the t-shirt and then leave again. It was like why are you there then? Whispered something nice to Roderick Strong. Felt emotional, but yeah, followed the predictably really good match. We thought maybe, you know, one of the matches that might have been one too many for us in the build, but it's Roderick Strong and Orange Cassidy, so of course it was going to be good.
Yeah, and it wasn't particularly long as well. Like, you got to talk, this is just over 12 minutes or so. I thought this was fine. Like, I'd expected it. He fulfilled the role that I thought it was going to on the weekend show. It's just like, well, actually, this is going to probably end up being one of those matches that's kind of lost in the shuffle. But the international title, I think you can move this away. Like, I think they've got this idea, like, and Roderick Strong mentioned it in the sort of pre-match package, didn't he? About this is the workhorse title. And you go, yeah, that's what they're pitching this as. The TNT has got soap and whatnot, and all of the kind of theatrical elements with Christian Cage. But with this one, this has been much more of a kind of like a workhorse title. So Roderick Strong is someone to put it on. It's just the Kylo. It doesn't interest me in terms of the machinations of this kind of like this group in total. And like you say, if I
NXT
saw
law, not you think? NXT Black and Gold law.
I could care less about that type of stuff, if I'm honest. I mean, the idea, if you told me he wasn't wearing a t-shirt walking down County Road, like, I would completely believe that. He has very much that kind of vibe to him, doesn't he? If he was starting to fight in a Wenzel's, I'd imagine you'd be like, yeah, that seems like kind of like what he ended up looking like for it.
Like, going to Wenzel's, he's going to Sayers, that lad, 100%. Sayers.
Is he? I Sayers.
A lot of local geography for you there. Yeah.
Okay.
But I did enjoy the match. Like I say,
yeah.
Roderick Strong he reminds you every now and then. He's got a fucking daft gimmick. And I'm surprised. Again, he's another one like Wardlow. We've done this big reveal of beating a dead horse with this Adam Cole stable. But like, they're like not a dark, spooky stable, but they're like, you know, a dark, foreboding, like, evil stable. But he's kind of still the jokey guy, but kind of that. I'm not sure. But then he goes in the match and he does what Roderick Strong always does: boots and trunks, goes out there and, you know, has that next level gear and gives you a great match. I wonder how they're gonna connect those two things when it comes to like his run as champion. But yeah, you called it on the weekend show. I would going in. I was convinced that Orange Cassidy was gonna retain. But you know, in fairness, you talked me out of it, because I think that Orange Cassidy this second run has definitely run its course anyway. Yeah. So it'll give us something fresh. Like you say, workhorse title, maybe do some open challenges, something like that.
Yeah. Just have it depending on TV loads and move Orange Cassidy up the card. Although I fear he'll end up feuding with a heel Trent Beretta for months. That's my fear. I don't want to see that. I'm not interested in that in the fucking slightest, no matter how much they hint at it.
3.5 stars. What would you give it?
Yeah, it's like 3.5 stars.
Fair enough. Going from there into the next match. Blackpool Combat Club, John Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli, or dare I say the Road Warriors, with they had those types of shoulder pads they'd sell in whatever WWE shop used to be when I was a kid. The magazine you'd order them from, you know, it'd be the shit kids ones that looked like they weren't worth the money. They were like 50 quid, and they were just like literally plastic, with foam spikes. That's what these look like. I don't know if Moxley's. I don't know. He leans into the cosplay bag a little bit too much for such a supposed hardball Moxley. That was a bit bizarre. But up against the FTR, been no secret. Like, I've been the low man, I think, overall on this feud. I think most people have been into it. I think at least at a level higher than me. And I was feeling that way about the match. Like, if I could assign this feud a colour, it would be the colour grey. It was just hard lads fighting over who's the hardest with no real discernible babyface or anyone to root for, and it didn't feel like any real stakes. Although, as we said with the main event coming out of it, I guess there are stakes, as you know, we have Moxley and Claudio now set up as decent challengers, so it's good fundamental booking, I suppose, at that point. But I felt like this live crowd for the first half of this, like, they were struggling to get this crowd into it for the first at least 10 minutes, it felt like. And then, in fairness, you know, at least 3 guess which three of the better wrestlers in the world were in this. And of course, you know, even up against it, even with a storyline that I personally find quite uninspiring, I think they pulled that crowd into it. They pulled that live crowd into it that were probably the quietest they've been all night, at least for the first part of this. They gave them something to root for, really through hard work, and then they had a belt in the last 5 minutes. So I did end up enjoying this probably on a similar level to the one before. I go 3.5 on it, but it was almost despite myself, JP, and despite my misgivings of the feud. Again, you can't really underestimate when, as we always say with AEW, you put 4 great wrestlers in the ring, they're probably going to give you a great match, and they did, in fairness. Or at least
they did, and it might have been the blood, even if it was delivered in kind of like a corny way, but just at the point where I don't know what it was, that seemed to work at that stage. Was it the first time we'd had
what it is,
blood on the card? That seemed to pull people back in, and then you get into the kind of hot finishing stretches that, you know, these guys can deliver with lots of kind of near finishes and counters and the rest of it, and you know, moments of like interrupting the kind of the breaking up pins and whatnot. And I thought all of that stuff was actually like delivered quite well, and I suspect we're going to get continuations of this as well at the same time. So like, I think it like, particularly if there's going to be a tag tournament, in many ways, I wouldn't mind seeing a Moxley-Claudio tag team. I know it sounds crazy. It just gives them something to do, like, in essence, and I think it would end up raising the stakes. You'd imagine, theoretically, that's what Moxley with the international title would have done on there. But, yeah, I'd be with you. I'd say 3.5, because I can't get over the fact that the first half of this match, I myself was feeling quite bored. Like, it was like I'd watched a stretch of this show, and it was almost like the culmination of that first half of it. And I was like, oh, bloody hell. Like, this isn't going to do. I was worried about them getting them back into it, but no, they did, in fairness. And yeah, it's not like FTR kind of necessarily lose anything, but in many ways, if you're doing a tournament, I wouldn't be that surprised if this ends up being like a kind of a rematch of you'd see a rematch in the final of that. That would kind of make sense.
It felt like when you played an EWR game, and as Tony Khan does in real life, and you've got 4 wrestlers on the side, and you're like, oh fuck, I've got a pay-per-view coming up. What do we do with Moxley? What do we do with Claudio? What do we do with FTR? Because, you know, and again, we didn't really say it when we talked the main event. Bucks were the absolute right choice for that main event, by the way. I know there was some people fighting for FTR. No, that wasn't the shout. Young Bucks ended up being the right shout for that occasion. It gave them something to do on a card when you didn't want to leave them off, which again can be a positive when you talk about Tony Khan. It can be a negative as well. But in the end, I was into this one. What you give it star-wise, JP?
3.5 stars, like you. I think it was like it like I say, that early stretch, it did drag.
Well, go to one of the other low points of the show here, JP. Toni Storm and Deonna Purrazzo was up next. Yeah, the girls went out there out of the match, and I feel like if the next match we're going to go into is the Americans and the greater public discovering kind of what, and those who don't, not that there's many of them, but those who don't regularly watch New Japan or the Brit Res Indies, or somehow missed Ospreay's other appearances in AEW, if you somehow had. When we get into that match, those fans were wowed by a lot of things that we've seen a lot of times before. I would say the same is true of this match of Toni Storm versus Deonna Purrazzo, which could have been second on a progress card at any point in go back a couple of years, and for the 4 years before it, where it felt like every show had Ginny versus Toni Storm in the second match in the card. I lost track, JP, on BW, the amount of times I said 3.25 stars Toni Storm, and it just shows you, doesn't it? Like, no matter, like, you can give somebody a complete repaint, again, not for me. Gimmick works, absolutely works. It's over. They're quite clever at times with like the black and white camera and stuff like that. She's putting a lot into it. The company's putting a lot into it. It's clearly, something that Tony Khan absolutely loves as well. They even had, at the top of this match, the stuff with Mariah May, which fooled me, similar to Sting's large son later on, which is a bit of a problem. I probably wouldn't have done it on this show when you were going to do that later on, but a lot of cosplay on this show is what it is. That's AEW. We do everything in twos. Why not? You have one good idea. Why not do it twice? But she was convincing, and you stood them both next to each other at that press, and it was hard to say who was Mariah and who was Tony. But then the bells got a ring, and she went out there and had that same Toni Storm match that I feel like I've been watching since 2013, 15, 16. Like, yeah, it wasn't bad. It was just kind of boring.
Yeah, it was boring. I thought this was active. I feared this, and the culminate. What I came away with is thinking Tony's, and this is like you've kind of stolen the first line of my notes on it. Tony Storm is still the same wrestler that she always was. This is just the gimmick. Like the whole thing is the gimmick, and I'm not into the gimmick. So this was like doubly worse. It was like a one-note joke being kind of exposed for the one-note joke that it is, and I was just there by the end of it going, yeah, Mercedes Moné just strap her up with the belt, have a feud with completely different people, and have Tony Storm doing mid-card comedy stuff, perhaps, bringing the women's tag team belts and have her team with Mariah May. That's the kind of level, really, of where she's at. Because she's not going to deliver like in-ring kind of great matches, and I think the joke is just gone at this stage. And it was this, and this was always going to be the issue. It was kind of in a death slot as well, where I think if you imagine the kind of matches that had to, go through the Eddie Kingston Danielson match before it, then you have the tag match just before it. Well, I just think there's a case of there's almost like there's a quality standard that I don't think that Tony Storm was not going to live up to. And I think at that first opportunity, the crowd were going to have a proper lull. And I think this is where they felt it.
That's maybe an argument to not ever on the card, isn't it? Because like, I'm not saying that, but like, where else in the card would have been better for them? Because like, I mean, as much as FTR and Blackpool got people back into it, following that and Roddy Orange Cassidy and that's 8-man scramble, arguably there's not a better place. And yeah, imagine if they tried to follow Ospreay to Takeshita with this half-speed match, which another few people did try to do with mixed results as well. Yeah, I don't know. It just I think I maybe expected more with thinking they've got that history and they've maybe got that little bit of chemistry there, but I didn't really see that. It just felt like a bog standard women's match worked at half speed, and you know what, 3.25 is probably being extremely generous. It's probably more like 3, maybe even 2.75, to be honest. It was just a match that existed, and yeah,
I was really disappointed by it. I got 2.5.
Yeah, maybe Tony needs to, I don't know, she's leaning a lot into the gimmick in the matches as well, though. Maybe they just haven't got that balance right. Maybe it is the fact that she's a heel rather than a face. I don't know. But yeah, definitely not clicking it in ring. And yeah, overall, yeah, as Simon says there, and agreeing with you, being a big lull in the show overall, maybe that is an argument there too as well. But just didn't work for me. But we did turn a corner, show wise, as we went hot again as we went into next up. A lot of people's match of the night, mine included, I would say. Will Ospreay and Takeshita went out there, and tell you what, JP, I think everybody kind of predicted, the build's not been great, but the match is going to be great. Like I said last week, I honestly thought the Dynamite segment was a very good introduction to Will Ospreay. I think it set up the match really nicely as far as like teasing, who was going to be the face and who's going to be the heel. The fans certainly got those cues because Ospreay was a babyface throughout this pretty much into the post match as well. So, I actually think most of the matches on this card, including the one before, there was critical of Tony Storm and Deonna Purrazzo, are quite long builds and were well built and, well prepared. This one wasn't a long-term one, but as a short-term build, I actually thought they did a good job. It felt like it had stakes. Dare I say it, I'm really a fan of him these days, but I thought Don Callis actually added to those stakes on commentary. I think, in just being that bit of needle, but doing that double talk Paul Heyman type thing where he's putting someone down, but also putting them over. But they're both his guys, so he's kind of, bringing them up while also sliding to half, putting them down. He walked that line really well. Maybe showed his hand a little bit leading on the Takeshita side, which again leans into the story they told. But then the two lads were out there, and I don't know, I've heard this match talked as having no story. I think it had one. I've heard, Matty said it on the pre-show. He feels like he's seen a lot of Will Ospreay already, and this was just another Will Ospreay match. I kind of get that criticism in that, the people who are designed to hate Will Ospreay matches are gonna hate Will Ospreay matches no matter what they are. But I thought this one was different in the fact that it was there's a lot of people who try and do this style of as matches go, as far as like, you know, modern, hard hitting. It's half flyer match, half a hard striker match, half kind of a spot fest, half there's kind of a story there. You know, lots of kickouts. It's an everything match, isn't it? And maybe, you know, I do have some sympathy for the people who that just isn't for them. You know, just literally doing everything you can possibly do in the 21 minutes that you're assigned out there. But when it's two wrestlers who are the athletes these two are, I don't think it can get better than this. Like, I've seen plenty of bad versions of this type of match. Like, I think where the bad faith comes in is where people talk about it like it's that, because it's not. It's two literal first class athletes, and Takeshita's right there with Ospreay when it comes to that side of things, pulling off things that they make look easy that are not easy, pulling off a pace of a match that shouldn't be easy to do, but they make it look easy to do. That had all the twists and turns. Yes, it had all your big moves. Yes, it had all your big kickouts, but it felt like it was earned, and it was. I guess it was a shootout of a match, but if you're gonna have a shootout of a match, you want it to be a shootout of this fucking quality, and this for me was world class from start to finish.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought this was, say, from an in-ring perspective, and this is the thing about this show, like, it had matches, lots of matches which had the kind of like had lots of build and storyline to it, and this felt like for me the beginning of something. Like, obviously that's where we're kind of starting off with this, and beginning really of what is going to end up being a feud between these two guys, because the chemistry that they had, like just some of the kind of combinations, whether it's going from like, I think it was it. I'm trying to think of where he caught him and turned him into a blue thunder bomb, and just
the balance that took, the balance to like stay on his feet.
Incredible.
Callis covered that well too.
This is the thing with it, is we see the Will. I've spoken about the Will Ospreay exhibition match a lot, and you see that a lot. But what you don't see is where the other person has the level of athleticism and timing that Takeshita has, in order to kind of go move for it. And it just added something to all of it. I mean, I think, you know, the hidden blades, like kind of like after he'd done the German and then he popped up and he did it. And you go, some of this is it that kind of like dumb jock wrestling, as you hear it being called? Yeah.
Tiger Driver 91's your lead candidate for. He said in the press that afterwards, oh, that's it's one of the most dangerous move in wrestling. Like, is it, Will? Because people seem to kick out of it a lot, mate. That's where the dumb jock part of his brain comes out. But whatever, it was a fucking shootout of a match of two equally, matched athletes, whatever.
No one should be ever kicking out of that brain buster into the corner, because by Christ, that
Fuck
was
me, his lower back. Jesus Christ.
That was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Especially if, like, if we followed his career, really. I mean, this podcast is in many ways like kind of been along at the time for all of the journey, the rise of Will Ospreay to this position in here, where he feels like a massive star. Like, you look at this crowd, and this crowd were like predetermined just to love him, and doing all the kind of like sing-alongs and doing the oi chants, so many other things going on here, that it was just this kind of like, it was just the levels of athleticism. Just, this is the match I've seen. I saw it a couple of times, and I ended up watching it again tonight. And Harry, the 7-year-old, was watching it, and he was kind of incredulous at the stuff they were doing. And George, who doesn't really like wrestling, but occasionally will say, I know it's not real, like, and then, but he'll go, but on this, they're really like, that's really impressive. And it's like, yeah, that's because that's kind of what they're doing, is there's a game of one-upsmanship going on here. It's just that Takeshita can actually deliver to that level in a credible way. So I want to see this match again. You add stakes to it, and you'd like to think to yourself, like, this can really like kind of go places as an introduction to like what they've signed with Will Ospreay, which is, again, if not the top big match, actual sort of spectacle wrestler in the world, then that's what they've got, and that's what he's able to demonstrate. And he's just completely like fucking laid it down here. I mean,
I think, yeah.
I
think for me, sometimes people watch matches like this. It's one of them, and we've always got to say, if you've got people who've got good reason to just not want to see Will Ospreay on their screen, okay, fair enough. And I think he'd probably say that himself. But like, as far as like the performer goes, like, I almost think sometimes like you watch him and people almost imagine this. They sat there watching it with like some mythical casual fan who's going to watch it and go, these lads don't sell anything. And you do get those bad faith accounts on Twitter who take a gif and go, there was no selling in this match. The coach, Jonathan Coachman's like among them, isn't he? This weekend, like he was going on about the main event. Like you get a lot of that. But it's like, in reality, like, I feel like if you actually, as you've just alluded to, show this match to anybody who doesn't watch wrestling, I think they're just... If they're going to point out, that didn't even hurt him, he's fine, they probably do that with your most boring technical match. Like, they'd say that about any wrestling match, it's all fake anyway. But you put something like this in front of them where it's like literally first-class athletes doing what they did in this match, I think they'd be more impressed by this than anything, and they'd be more wild by this than anything. And I think the proof is in the pudding. You know, I always say it, wrestling's a work for a reason, to get the loudest possible reaction out of the crowds. Like, that's why the business started what it was, to draw crowds and to make those crowds react, you know, and to work them into reacting. The new work is the old work. Like, did the 1 count kick out get a gigantic reaction? Yes. Did the other kick outs get a gigantic reaction? Yes. Were they perfectly timed? Absolutely yes. And they drove this crowd into an absolute frenzy, and it made anybody, like I say, I can't imagine there's many people out there who haven't seen Will Ospreay before, or maybe weren't as familiar with him as the likes of us, where it was, as you said, the perfect introduction for him for that, where like he feels over on an even bigger level than I think he ever has in his little, you know, cup of teas that he's had in AEW, including, you know, what All In. He felt like a gigantic star here, as he did in the promo. And it's off to the races with him now. It's like, you know, I've seen a little bit of negativity towards, they're going to build All In around him based off this. They should. And based off the reaction we saw him get last year, they should. And as a 1-2 combo, promo and then match, I don't think they've done a better job of reintroducing him.
Oh, they absolutely should be building All In around him. Why wouldn't you? Like, him and Jamie Hayter, if you can do that. Like, if you can build to the return of Jamie Hayter, which, you know, I haven't heard anything about on that, that's what you kind of want. And that's what the level that it should be at. Absolutely. And it's working with audiences, because I think for what they're going to see, probably more so than what they're going to see with Okada, is, and it's going to sound incredible for us because we've seen so many Will Ospreay matches, but Will Ospreay matches are going to feel like an event in and of themselves, of like, this guy is going to be like spectacular, because he spent the last couple of years just determined to deliver some of the best and most highly regarded wrestling matches in contemporary wrestling history.
And he's not going to stop. He's got a contract, and we see now this is what he's going to. Maybe you know, the TV match he's got coming up with Carl Fletcher, maybe foot off the gas just a little bit. But as far as like big matches go, he's going to be going for it like he did in New Japan.
Just have 8-minute sprints. That would be my suggestion. Because that would be the teaser for the big, like, kind of epic Will Ospreay matches that you might get on pay-per-views. But between them two, I wouldn't want to see that match going more than 8 to 10 minutes, because we've seen him have that kind of match before. And when he does that, that's just like a sight to behold, as like a kind of like a piece of TV. But he's definitely off to the races.
He's going to be, with Kenny Omega gone, I think he's going to take that spot on the roster.
Yeah.
Like, Kenny Omega has got many negatives as an American TV wrestler. I think people don't like hearing that, but you know, he's not, in a lot of ways, he'd say it himself, he's not built for American TV wrestling in the jobs that you need to do, in the boxes you need to tick to be an American TV wrestler. The bit where he shines as an American TV wrestler, though, is when the bell rings and he's in the matches, and it's not about the promos or the story building or the, you know, character or any of that stuff, you know, building interest in future matches, you know, getting your segment right, all of that stuff. When it's just a match, there's not many better TV wrestlers in the world. I think Ospreay's going to be of a similar vintage, and stick him in when he's fit with a Vikingo, you know, and you can get a similar main event to what you get with Omega, and then once Omega's back, you can build to that next match with them as well. I thought the match was fantastic. What would you give it star rating, Master?
So I'm not going to go 5. Like, I think in some way, I'd go, but I would. See, initially I've got 4.5 in my head.
Yeah.
Like, is really where I am with this. And there's a part of me leans towards 4.75. But this is like an introductory match. At the same time, for all of the stuff that we've said,
4.75 is pretty high.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? But within a Will Ospreay, the amount of Will Ospreay matches that fall into this kind of category as well. You just think, oh fucking hell! Like, what's a better match that Takeshita's had on TV? It's against Kenny Omega. So it feels like kind of rather apropos, isn't it? It's just like, yeah, he just comes in and delivers from, and he puts less pressure on Kenny Omega to be that type of wrestler as well. You've got Ospreay around the place, and I think that would really help him, just to kind of not have that not have the best bout machine kind of levels of expectation that he's going to deliver these belting matches. And I think in some ways it might do him good as well. And obviously there's a trilogy match there. Whether or not that's something you do that at All In, you know. But I think in some ways, and it's difficult, we're going to talk about it with the world title match next, but where Ospreay fits into that picture, because we're not that far away from All In, incredibly. So at the start of fucking March somehow, and you're thinking, yeah, we're not, you know, we're only 5 months away from there. Like, yeah, need to start. Yeah, exactly. Need to start thinking about pushing him towards like that world title mix sooner rather than later. Certainly around Double or Nothing.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm with you, by the way. Like, I was splitting the difference between 4.5 and 4.75. I wasn't going 5 on it, but probably 4.75. Just, yeah, and that's fucking great, you know. And there's more to go, you know. Imagine a rematch. I'd take that too. But yeah, absolutely incredible, and yeah, definitely the match of the show for me, no matter what the star rating. Yeah, we'll get going with the Wembley updates. It says in the chat there, need to get that running. Patreon.com/GRAPPL for the GRAPPL weekend show, where you can get such things. A bit of preview of that later. Got a lot of news to get through after this pay-per-view review, so maybe that'll be like a mini weekend show. But there is one other match to talk from this pay-per-view before we do move on, JP. And it's a small battle of the AEW World Title. I had a bit of a rush of blood to me since the weekend show, JP, as we took the betting odds for this one and saw how much of an outsider Adam Page was. Stuck 20 quid, didn't I, on 14-1 Hangman Adam Page. I'm an idiot, I know. So, but it was, I just started to work myself into a shoot, JP. I was like, I didn't think he would. I put 20 quid on it, so it sounds like I thought he was going to win. I didn't actually think he was going to win. I just thought there was a better chance than 14-1 that he was going to win. I thought it was plausible. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it's still an outside bet. But I think when we talked on the weekend show, it was like 20-1, something daft like that. So the odds came in. So, and I was just, I had money signs in my head, I had pound signs in my head, because I was, look, well, if I bet 20 quid, I could win 300 there. 300 quid would be nice, wouldn't it? And yeah, we basically wasted 20 quid, unfortunately. But it could have fucking happened. Could have been the story they were telling on this night. And I think it come there was rumor as well before the show that it was going on last, which also maybe kind of ears prick up and made me think, oh, maybe there's a title change coming here. Could be Swerve, could be Hangman, could be worth it a little flutter. Didn't happen. Instead, they did take the second to last spot, and it was all right. I said there's highs and lows on this pay-per-view, and I'm overwhelmingly high on the pay-per-view. But I don't think this match was one of the reasons, and it's funny, JP, because coming in against my own instincts, I was a big defender of the three-way match. I traditionally, and we've just talked about an example with WWE, would not have gone this route, but when they went it, I thought, yeah, smart. Take the heat that Swerve and Hangman have got and their ongoing issue and attach it to Samoa Joe, who's been this really, you know, solid, reliable world champion, who's reset kind of expectations and just the feeling around the promotion. That works in theory, and I suppose it worked in theory, but then the match happened, and yeah, I don't know. I've not really listened to much other audio, so I don't know whether if people are high or low on this one. But I'm quite low on it, really. I found it a bit clunky. I thought there was a good story to tell there with Hangman and Swerve. And again, similar to what we were saying before, I think the simultaneously didn't go far enough and also went too far. The finish wasn't I was expecting something a little bit more creative for the finish. Maybe I would have pushed it too far and had Hangman tap on purpose or something like that to cost Swerve. Maybe I got excited about that. Maybe I'm the idiot and that would have been stupid too. But yeah, apart from a couple of moments where I bit near the end on the near falls, mainly because I had my 20 quid at stake, just didn't really grab me this match. They struggled, I think, as you alluded to there, to follow Ospreay and Takeshita. it was a lot of the worst aspects of Swerve for me as well. His offense in this one was just a lot of the indie stuff that he should leave to AR Fox. Let AR Fox do that stuff, mate. As James rightly said on Twitter a few weeks ago on a tweet, like forward rolls into stuff didn't work. This is me including on James's analogy, but this is me talking. Forward rolls didn't work for Mark Haskins. Not sure they're ever going to work for Sir Strickland, but that seems to be a lot of his offense. That stupid double stomp thing. A lot of contrivance in this match, and I think a lot of it was coming from his end with the three of them. And just didn't click for me, JP, and was, again, not bad, but not the high level that I thought this would be. And that was both from a execution point of view and for an interesting story coming in. I don't think it was that interesting coming out, or as interesting as it could be. What say you?
I think
don't know what you're gonna say.
In the main, I'm probably a fraction higher than you, but not that much. In the sense, I like all three components in the match. I've enjoyed the storyline aspects in terms of going into this match. I think the problems that it had was it was following the Takeshita Ospreay, and it wasn't the main event. So it didn't feel like it was the big kind of event for the show. It wasn't the match that people were really hyped up about as much as they've been enjoying the storylines and the rise of Swerve Strickland and stuff like that. And Adam Page. I think the problem was with this match, and I think, like I say, there was like very obvious moments of contrivance as well, like Samoa Joe making sure that he's shuffling over in order to take the knees after I think he did the muscle buster.
He looked like he hated that himself.
Page.
When he had to sit up to take the double stomp, as you're saying there, he looked pissed off. He looked like, why am I fucking sitting here like an idiot?
Yeah.
If he doesn't listen to any other advice anyone ever gives him, I hope somebody backstage is saying, mate, you need to drop that move. It was shit when Del Rio did the version in the corner. It's shit when you do it. It makes everyone look stupid. Stop it. It's crap.
Yeah, it really isn't. And then we obviously had like it's the problem I have with triple threat matches. Triple threat matches for me don't feel like importance because it feels like, well, what you should always be happening. This is old man yells at cloud kind of stuff from me, but I like it when the two people want to be number one contenders have to wrestle each other in order to get that one-on-one match. And I think as soon as you don't have that and you worked out a way to have both of them in the match, I always think there's going to be issues then at this stage because it feels like it's almost obvious. It's like, but we can have the match go longer because Joe doesn't have to work all of the step of the way. But I found myself just happy that Joe had the title in the end in terms of watching the match because it wasn't the right moment to put it on Swerve. I think the problem was it was so because the finish had been kind of like telegraphed, this idea that he's gonna like kind of tap out, and I think this is going to be, you tapped out, and it was a rather soft tap out, is what we're kind of expecting, not him passing out or anything else, but doing it in order to spite Swerve Strickland. I think it's how they.
Do you think that's still what they were trying to do?
I think they were, and I don't think they kind of managed to pull that off. But it's such a subtle thing to do because you're relying on a lot of like really good facial acting from Hangman Page, and that wasn't what I saw in that finish. And yeah, Hangman Page as kind of big heel is definitely an interesting direction for this. I don't know where it feels like this feud is going to go on sort of separately for a while, and we're going to have other new people come into the mix. And then my only concern with that is then are we is this a storyline that we need to come back to every once in a while, but you need breaks in it as well? And I think that's my concern is that's going to be the direction, whereas Joe takes on a completely new challenger. But I wasn't coming out of it like kind of. But this is all of this, like notwithstanding, like this match kind of not delivering it for me. Do I prefer it to all of the MJF stuff? Absolutely. Like that left such a bad taste in my mouth that I think anything in terms of Samoa Joe having the title, I'm like, yeah, fine. Like I'm all right with that. Like I don't mind that kind of like stuff in the main. I think his role, it's almost like it's so sad because he's being given that kind of proper push that you think TNA could have done this from the moment he fucking walked in the door, just booked him this way. And he was young then or younger, and he could have had all those fucking proper killer matches. And instead we're having to do it. We're really at like the tail end of his top line career. And that's like my little annoyance of like, fucking, it wasn't that hard in the end, was it? To kind of book Samoa Joe properly. It really fucking wasn't. but every major company on earth, we just like inexplicably couldn't do it.
Yeah, I'm not mad about more Samoa Joe as world champion. I think again he continues to ground the company. I think we all agree long-term direction is probably going to end up with one of Hangman Page or Swerve. It's just kind of how they end up getting there. But yeah, no use for buy 20 quid. But it wasn't happening here tonight. And again, I didn't hate it. Just didn't love it as much as I had loved the story going in. But as we said going into it, if there was a pay-per-view you could get away with this on, it was this one, because it wasn't the match the show was living or dying by. It was the semi-main event for a reason. That looked, in fairness, that was a great call. You couldn't have, as was rumoured on the afternoon, have followed the Sting retirement with this, and you shouldn't either.
Couldn't clean the ring, mate.
Maybe damn them with faint praise, but we're probably not going to be talking about, when we look back on AEW Revolution 2024, it's probably not going to pop into our head. What's going to pop into our head is the other two matches we raved about and the main event. And yeah, maybe you get away with one for that reason. And still, with all that said, still three very good wrestlers. Still 3.25 feels too low. Maybe just about 3.5 star match, but that's massively on the disappointing end of what I thought they could do.
3.75.
Okay, higher than me.
Like they're very good professional wrestlers, but it wasn't.
There's a flaw.
It didn't hit. Yeah, but it didn't. It didn't hit the heights of perhaps where it could have done.
Definitely. And from there, yeah, we had our main events, which, as we talked about earlier, definitely, everyone's joining the stream live. We loved it. Took us all home in a very nice way, and yeah, that's the pay-per-view really, JP. And it's interesting because, like I say, I haven't had much audio on it, but my feeling is I've seen a lot of people talk about it as possibly the best AEW show ever. I think our review there probably gives away I don't feel that way. But like I said at the top, did it feel like a proper AEW review? Warts and all, for positive and negative? Yes. I mostly enjoyed the epic nature of it. I enjoyed that we had 3 matches that I'm going to be thinking about come year's end for 3 very different reasons. I enjoyed the variety show aspect of it. I didn't necessarily enjoy the bad things on the show, but you know, that's kind of an AEW pay-per-view for good or bad again. That kind of gave me a bit of a nostalgic twinge for like these great AEW shows of past. I think it's up there with the very, very good AEW shows, but I wouldn't have it at the tippy top. How about you?
I wouldn't have it at the tippy top. I mean, I always think that it's going to be that all out show, isn't it, from Chicago? It always feels like that's possibly going to end up being like kind of like almost like some of the really big highlight from it. But it was the end of what was one of their better cycles creatively, and it feels like they've stabilized, and it feels like they got the idea of how to build to a proper pay-per-view. And I think all of those things I was just grateful for. I was grateful for actually, like, for the most part, like the TV has generally been very good. It has. And even in latter weeks towards the end of the build, you think, okay, it's not great. We've got this new pay-per-view, which obviously they announced, the AEW Dynasty, which is, I mean, it has to open with the, like, kind of some Dynasty music as well, hopefully. Love me a bit of Joan Collins in the day. It was Dynasty and Dallas in my household, and that's like the 21st of April. So there's a little bit of time to that, and then obviously you've got like Double or Nothing towards the end of May, I want to assume. So we are getting into that cycle where, like, and after Double or Nothing, it's going to be a lot of it's going to be the build to All In. So you've got these 2 shows coming up where you've got like the good chance, probably like a good 6-week build to this one, but they've got to have their eye on what they're doing for the other future months. They've got some people who are going to be returning from injury. So depth on that roster isn't going to be an issue. You've got Mercedes Moné. You've got the small matter of Kazuchika Okada probably on Dynamite from Atlanta as well. That's going to be like, you know, in terms of those announcements, imagine what like these pay-per-views could end up being. Like, there is, to say that you shouldn't have. Yeah.
Imagine a pay-per-view, JP, with Kazuchika Okada, Kenny Omega, Jay White, all in prominent positions. It sounds amazing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, Omega, White, Opsreay as well, Okada, big 4 there. Can't imagine a company doing anything with that. But yeah, it's an exciting period. Not just for us as podcasters, it's exciting because it's fucking big shit to talk about, isn't it? I'm kind of I don't, for that reason, I don't mind AEW sneaking extra pay-per-views in. Whether there'll be whether there will be diminishing returns, we will see. But yeah, I'm fine with that Dynasty announcement. I'm interested in what that looks like. I mean, as far as like other news coming out, I didn't think there was much from the presser. It was a lot of victory lap stuff for Sting. Kind of a weird one because it started without Tony at first, and he kind of joined during, and Renee had to carry it, and she was asking questions. It was all quite odd, really. But there wasn't much there to write home about. Dynasty, the poor man's Dallas. Simon says, yeah, don't know about that.
I don't know.
Another cork of it. God.
Dallas is sleazier than Dynasty. Dynasty is very much like kind of like posher accents. There's no J.R. Ewing on there. He's a proper bastard.
I will say as well, I'm not doing it in any kind of organic way. Simon's comment of Gentleman's Three-Way. I feel like that might be the title of the show because I think that sums up that world title match 100%. Might borrow that. We'll see. Audio listeners will already know. But yeah, speaking of news that's come out, not so much from the presser, but in the 24 hours since, there has been a hell of a news cycle since AEW Revolution. First story we need to talk about, JP, is that Sammy Guevara apparently has been suspended by AEW in relation to his match with Jeff Hardy. This coming from Fightful Select. Out of respect, I won't throw the full story up on screen, but essentially it's due to Sammy Guevara not following concussion protocol in his match with Jeff Hardy. We all remember the GIF that was doing the rounds before that Rampage aired on TV, and it did very much appear that Jeff Hardy was concussed. Apparently the heat on Sammy Guevara was to do with him hitting his finish after that point when Jeff Hardy was concussed, which obviously goes against the concussion protocol that AEW have got set up. Whether there's heat on the ref or the agents or the medical staff surrounding, I guess we will see. But yeah, when it was teased earlier today from Fightful that an AEW wrestler had been suspended, you'd probably guess that Sammy Guevara is in your top 10. I feel like this is the second time he's been suspended. I thought it was 3 because Eddie Kingston was the one who ended up suspended when they had their fight. Yeah, what do you do about Sammy Guevara at this point?
Well, this is it. I think the fact that suspending him does kind of say quite a lot, and I don't think his role is necessarily as certain as it may well have been, particularly given the fact of like who's his big kind of like backer backstage is Chris Jericho. Does he perhaps? You have to wonder at what point does he still carry the level of clout that he once did? Because it feels like they've done as much as they can do there. So I find the kind of like story in and of itself interesting. There's things about, sorry to make light of it, but the idea of Jeff Hardy, like the idea of there being someone in a match being kind of like, sloppy and reckless in a match with Jeff Hardy, there's a certain delicious irony to it, isn't it? Yeah.
There's a match that won't be on the Sting mixtape this weekend, let me just say that.
Yeah. Exactly, on there as well. And then there was other sort of reports on the Fightful story as well, where it said about like there was some thought that his lack of selling after the Hobbs match might have led to the suspension in there as well at the same time. And that's kind of like an interesting side note, because that's just like a general attitude and demeanor problem, which is always something that's been reported with him to be the case. Like, I'm not suggesting that they're going to fire him. Could they fire him? Absolutely. Would he be missed? I don't think so. Like, I think there's 1,000,001 people. I think like a cull of the roster is something that we've said that actually they kind of need to do. And for a lot of the wrestlers, they need to be able to go somewhere else and kind of like, they don't need the amount of people that they simply have in there as well. So, and the fact that it is generally like there's always different things with him and different kind of problems.
Always something.
There is always
someone
something.
like him in every job, don't you? You know someone like him in all your life. Like, yeah. I mean, I think this feels like a mature decision from the company, like to actually take action in this, because it wasn't that many years ago that, and I'm sure it's probably part of what will be his defense. That's the way we're trained. You finish your match. I'm sure Jeff would have wanted to finish the match. Things like that. I'm glad we're not in that world anymore. We shouldn't be in that world anymore. No. And if it's as bad as it sounds, I think suspending him probably is reasonable. But I'm not reasonable, JP, because I just sack him because I just can't stand him. I know that's not a good reason, but like, I'd just be like, if it was me in charge, I'd be like, here's my excuse. He's gone. Can't be asked. He's never getting over.
You and EWR, you're getting rid. You're getting rid.
Yeah. He's not a sub babyface. He is. He's that email you constantly get. Oh, it's fucking him again, is it? Like, I'd literally hit the fire button. Like, that's what I do in TEW. Like, there's a hit the get myself out of the contract trouble. You're fucking gone. But that's mainly because I just don't find him. He's the Seth Rollins of AEW. Don't like him. He's not likable as a babyface. He doesn't wrestle the style of a heel to be an effective heel. He's a fucking lump of wrestler who should just go work NWA with fucking Flip Gordon and people like that. Like, I'm not a Sammy Guevara guy, but I think that's more me than a reasonable reaction to the story. But yeah, obviously be interesting. And speaking of men who, if Jericho's not coming to his aid, a man who's Jericho is not definitely coming to is one Mike Santana. As we have seen Santana taking more indie bookings as of late, including for Rev Pro. Got a couple of Rev Pro related stories to talk about in a little while. But yeah, Mike Santana is in fact no longer with AEW. Explains why he's over in Europe. Apparently been removed from the roster page. And Sean Ross Sapp confirms that he is no longer with AEW. Don't really reaction to that one for you, JP, but like, I've got to say, for me, I tweeted about it, and I don't tweet much these days because my tweets end up in Discords and can't be arsed with it. I'd rather it's just not for me, as my light goes off. But it's, for me, he is a wrestler and they are a team who I was a gigantic fan of once upon a time. Like, genuinely, absolutely loved LX during their indie run. Absolutely thought there was money in them in AEW. When they signed and they came out in the Dead President's masks, like, honest to God, I was like, these are going to be the number 2 team behind the Young Bucks with the right presentation, with the marketable gimmick. They were cool. They were kind of current feeling. Matthew will laugh at me for saying that, but I always felt like that about them. I love their TNA run. And then what were they in AEW? I mean, I know they had some matches with the top teams in AEW, but they never had a sustained push or run as a top team in AEW. They were goons for Jericho, Santana and Ortiz. And if you believe Conan, and I'm sure he's got reason to know, that's part of the reason they ended up broken up, because Ortiz was happy with his lot in life and happy with being, standing next to Jack Swagger as the 5th guy on a 5-man Jericho team in whatever match of the month was going on, with whoever Jericho was feuding. And Santana seemed to see through it a lot more, and seemed to think that there was more that they could have had as a tag team. And I understand the decision now because, as we saw, the Santana and Ortiz feud took place entirely on Rampage. Kind of gave you an indication the company weren't happy they weren't teaming. They tried to force them to team it all in. That obviously didn't work. And at the end of the day, as seems to be happening with a lot of problems children backstage at AEW, there comes a point where if someone's refusing to do something, then yeah, you probably do have to go this route, whether it's a release or granting somebody the release, whichever way it has came. It's probably the right decision. But as with a lot of stories with AEW, as we talk about, we didn't have to get AJP. I think it was, we can agree with the decision in the present day and kind of go, yeah, I don't really know where Santana, unfortunately, would fit as a singles act in AEW at this point. But I still think they deserve pelters for overall handling of their team and for, that tag division never really getting off the ground and them never really feeling like a major part of it.
I saw the comment that was raised, and I think it might be one of the replies to you, where somebody had said, like, honestly, there's like what they should have been is them FTR Bucks should have been their version of the Dudleys, Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys. That's really where they should have kind of been. That's how good they were. And it's kind of because they were, I mean, if you consider where they came from in Impact, in terms of they took over the gimmick from someone else, and that is normally like just a death knell in wrestling to ever be put into that slot. And they made it fucking. They were better than the original team. They really were. Like,
I think if you say LAX, I think of them. I don't, and I love Homicide, but I don't think of Homicide and Hernandez anymore. I think of them.
Oh mate, I've got a soft spot for Hernandez. Yeah, I don't think of them.
Too. Love them too.
I love the name. The name, everything else about
them. Losing that was just Proud and Powerful stunk as a name. That's another element actually. Like that, there must have been a better name.
I think the problem's going to be is, do I see Mike Santana as a top guy? No. I'm happy to be proven wrong, yeah. And that's really where the real test is going to be, because it was never going to happen in AEW. If he wants this, it's like, all right, well, you've got that now, because that's what you're going to be. You're going to be like by yourself. Now, could he end up delivering all these kind of like brutal promos? I mean, in many ways, I would normally say, like, if Impact had all of their ducks in a row and whatnot, he'd be like a really good pickup for them.
He'd be perfect.
Like he'd be like perfect for them to go in there because he could work all of his indies, but at the same time be given kind of credibility as a top kind of like singles guy who already has a history in the company. So it all kind of like really, really writes itself.
And
he's better off out of there. Like that much.
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I just want to interject and say, like, I do rate him. I just AEW's overstuffed, and there's too many people, and to get him a former tag wrestler over as a singles guy is just, it's an uphill climb. But I think still think there's a high ceiling there with him. Like, I get it feels a bit Mustafa Ali, you know, and Mustafa Ali landed in the right places, I think, you know, and being in like a TNA, we can see if he sinks or swims. It's looking more on the negative side right now. With him, something like that might be a perfect fit for him, and we will get to see if I'm right that he's got a high upside there. I think he's got a much higher upside than Ortiz. Like, Ortiz still being employed. It's like, well, all right, what are you going to do with him? Was he ever going to follow Eddie Kingston around? Like, what else can he really do? He should have been the one begging to get the team back together. Maybe he was. I don't know. Don't know the ins and outs of it, but like, yeah. I am quite high on Santana. Like, I like him a lot. I think there's something there, but was there ever going to be the space to find that something in AEW? Probably not, unfortunately. Yeah, so maybe it's best for him.
It is. And, you know, what's his first stopping off point? Well, it's going to be Rev Pro in Stevenage. Like, that's coming up really soon. Like, he's going to be on an extended. So that's, you know, like, it's these kind of things they're going to be interested to see. Like, and I look forward to seeing some of, like, on Rev Pro on Demand as well when he turns up there. Like, just to see what he's like. Just in the main, I think that's going to be like kind of like an interesting story to follow. But yeah, I'd like to see him do well. I'd be more than happy to see him kind of generally succeed and betting on himself, because I do like it when wrestlers do that.
Definitely. Well, 2 more AEW stories before we move into some WWE stuff, and we will be visiting some Rev Pro stories in a little while. With AEW, it's 1 positive, 1 negative. First up, Tony Khan saying he's got big plans for Wednesday's Dynamite this week in Atlanta. We won't give it the full preview, JP. We talked a lot of AEW already today. But yeah, apparently, with big business in Boston next Wednesday. We got huge plans in Atlanta. Be there Wednesday and or Thursday this week. Don't really understand what that means. Are they taping Thursday as well? I guess so. Any ideas what Tony Khan's big plans might be for Dynamite this week, JP?
Is it Kazuchika Okada? That was what was rumored. I mean, they were going to be going from this pay-per-view into the Okada debut, into the big business, and Mercedes Moné debut as well, which I fear might be overkill for the TV. And kind of like that's there's a lot of like new signings you're parading all at the same time. And it's like, yes, you've got them, but you've got to think about how you logically put them in to get that biggest kind of build. And I also think with someone like Kazuchika Okada as well, you'd want to build it. You'd want to plug it to be like, okay, he's coming in, and actually have like a very clear direction. You don't want to see him just wheeled out on TV, forced to deliver some kind of promo, like in, you know, not in his native language. Whenever I've heard it, like, God, you know, he can speak English, but delivering emotive promos on TV wrestling kind of scares me, and it makes me fear that that's the direction they're pushing him into. And is he going to be in working kind of angles and stories to build a dynasty? Whereas I'd almost want to see he debuts there at the next pay-per-view and we see the build for it, and it's going to be a really big deal and people want to wrestle the great Kazuchika Okada. That's a direction I'd sooner they go in, but I fear that's the route that they're going to go down, is just debuting, getting them out there to try and kind of like generate kind of, I don't think that long-term introducing him that quickly is a good thing.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I was negative on Opsreay coming in, and they proved me wrong. Maybe they'll do it with Okada as well. But should say that's not the last AEW related story to talk about. Should mention as well, and that's not a nice one, but just update on BJ Whitmer and the situation with him, as apparently he's going to be doing any jail at the time. Sean Ross Sapp mentions here in a tweet, apparently he's accepted what's called an Alford plea in his case, where he was accused of breaking into his ex-girlfriend's house, waiting on her to get home and strangling her to prevent her from speaking out on previous domestic issues with him. Apparently he's getting probation and 6 months house arrest, is the story there. Victim was not on board, Sean Ross Sapp reports. with the plea deal being accepted. I think I echo Sean Rossap's thoughts there. The system failed and it's gross, and I just wanted to point it out because it's not a nice story, JP. But you know,
That's horrible.
he is someone that's come up a lot when we've talked retro ROH and stuff like that. And in the past, I've had positive things to say about, but yeah, fuck me. Not the. I'm gonna talk some grim stuff from WWE in a second as well, and yeah, you know, this is grim itself too.
Yeah, this is absolutely grim. I know that there was like obviously the stories from his ex partner Kelly Klein, you know, and Jesus, it makes you kind of despair. I know that I was funny enough watching a documentary about Sarah Everard, and in terms of the police, like kind of, and that's related to a story that happened over here. But it's the issue of these like kind of these men who kind of who abuse women, who effectively there is this like being able to take plea deals, there never being that kind of level of justice, never taken as seriously by the courts and by authorities, and it's a global thing. Why? Because it's a misogynist thing, and that is global. But yeah, absolutely fucking horrific.
Why don't women come forward, JP? Well, yeah, there's answers to that, isn't there?
Exactly.
Other news stories. Speaking of which, unfortunately, we should talk some WWE stories. Start off with Vince McMahon. Apparently sold 5.3 million shares of his TKO stock. This is a lower amount than he sold at the tail end of last year. The shares are valued at an eye-watering, count the zeros, 411 million is that? Almost 412 million. Apparently still got 15 million shares of TKO stock left, so it's like a quarter or so of his shares, presumably for the defense funds. Hard to really say, isn't it, JP? But that is something that came up on the WWE earnings call last week. Talking about it, it was almost like they were talking about him like they didn't want to say his name. One of the questions was well, what if a major shareholder decides to sell his stock, or if you had any conversations on what he's going to do with all his remaining stock? And they were pretty blunt about it, like they know as much as anybody else. Not that I've got any sympathy for those cunts either, because they knew what they were getting into bed with Vince McMahon. But yeah, I guess Vince has blinked first a little bit here with this sale.
Yeah. There's legal defense. There's also settlements. And I think that's what he's prepping himself for. And before he shed too many tears, if you do the maths on what's he got? You said 15 million, like in terms of other shares. So what? We're talking 3 times the amount of what this will be worth. That's an extra 1.2 billion. Like he'll pay the fortune on these. Why? Because he's not going to end up doing any jail time. And this is the way that he gets out of it, by doing that and paying for incredibly like high-priced defense lawyers who are going to make sure that if this goes to a grand jury, there is a level of insulation, or that it doesn't go to jury and that they manage to settle before they go in, and therefore, sells this money. He still has an obscene amount on there, but it's just to make sure that he isn't effectively someone who ends up in a prison cell anytime soon. Why? Because he's rich and he can get away with it. Another depressing story.
And he's got ways to find how to get richer as well, unfortunately. Yeah. And just quickly related to that, as there's is pretty grim stuff. We have some more details on the investigation into Ashley Massaro's sexual assault claims. There was an investigation at the time, if anybody had any doubt about this case and the real severity of it. The United States Naval Command Service launched an investigation into the allegations in June 2019. Apparently, that investigation closed in January of 2020 when it was determined all leads have been exhausted. But yeah, it does show that there was at least some form of investigation into it. There was an interview conducted of Ashley Massaro's physician at the time, and basically all of the the facts that we knew about that case check out, and are corroborated by at least a complaint being made in some form at the time, JP.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is a part of the issue in terms of this story in here, is that it's the idea that that there is there's someone in there who's an assistant physician who remembers who was being accompanied by a man who was skittish and strange, and possibly had a mustache, which sort of tallies up with with Ashley Massaro had said and her story in there as well, that like it just feels like in terms of there wasn't people who are going to be talking, so it feels in many ways they weren't able to get that kind of like the kind of information they would need, like in terms of actual names of people that they'd be able to investigate and look into, and obviously anything in terms of like being able to check for DNA or anything else in there that wasn't like kind of possible, and that kind of makes these types of investigations somewhat impossible as well. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Another fucking like another fucking horrific story.
Yeah. Terrible. And you know, always worth bringing up. Obviously, there's other WWE notes we will get into, but I just don't think those stories should ever be lost amongst the excitement about the Hall of Fame or whatever else we've got going on to distract at any given time. But with that out of the way, we will talk the other news stories coming out of that company. And yeah, chief among them, Paul Heyman, will be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, the first proper Hall of Fame class, I guess, without Vince McMahon. We think, with Triple H reportedly being the one to pick these names. Obviously, Mania is happening at Philadelphia, so yeah, makes sense. Referred to Paul Heyman as a promoter, a manager, an executive, and a wise man. Did not use the word advocate or anything related to Brock Lesnar there. That's probably going to get laughed out of any Paul Heyman speech in Philadelphia. I think it's got to be a lot of rah ECW type stuff. But yeah, there we go. Paul Heyman going into the WWE Hall of Fame. Any thoughts on that, JP?
I mean, he definitely should be there. And the fact they're in Philadelphia kind of makes sense for this. I think, like you say, there's one of two things that I thought immediately. The person who he effectively been managing for like what was the guts of 2 decades and was indelibly linked with, particularly in a WWE context, in Brock Lesnar, not being mentioned. They're gonna. That's what'll happen. Like you say, they'll focus on ECW, they'll focus on Bloodline stuff, and they'll focus on him in terms of being creative and bad with money. Like it'll be the usual kind of like Heyman shtick. They'll just eliminate Brock Lesnar from the equation on that. I mean, a Triple H Hall of Fame, I won't lie, is kind of more interesting because you think, okay, well, what route is he going to go down? Is there going to be more kind of like contemporary people? Dare I say, I mean, I don't know if he's already in there, but like a Jim Johnston, I know like that sounds daft, but there are people like of that kind of ilk that I would like to see like into the mix, people who should be there, who maybe aren't wrestlers. Like I say as well, I think also like there'll be some more contemporary people who'll be like sort of like thrown into the mix. So I think this will be a very carefully thought out, and dare I say it, kind of political version of the Hall of Fame. They'll be thinking cynically, our name has been dragged through the mud with Vince McMahon. We want to put up in the main names and figures that are going to give people a good positive feeling about WWE. They're not going to be dumb about this. They're going to be thinking very, very carefully.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, we'll see what the other names are. I hadn't really thought about the Hall of Fame like until this announcement. It's like, oh yeah, that's still a thing. That's like,
I never do, mate.
They need to come up. Yeah, to be fair, the night of we don't really either, do we? Or the day after when we're doing those major review podcasts. But yeah, Paul Heyman makes sense as a name. And yeah, one other WWE story is worth noting before we get into our last stuff is we talked about it a little bit on the pre-show for patrons because we couldn't help it with Matty on the pre-show. But Smackdown on Fox this week, pretty bog standard number overall, but thought the quarter-hour viewership were bad, talking about graphic here courtesy WrestleNomics over on their Patreon and over on their website WrestleNomics.com. But that gigantic tent, or at least like half of a tent that goes up in those first 3 quarters, JP, I mean, just tells you, doesn't it? The interest is there for the Rock and Roman bloodline stuff, and yeah, as we talked about on the pre-show a little bit. 40-minute promo segment might not always be to our taste, but it clearly grew that viewership, and yeah, gigantic quarter for them there with Rock and Roman. Did you see it yourself, the segment? I wondered what you
I
made of it.
didn't, mate.
I'm guessing, is there a clip version on YouTube? I think even the YouTube version's about 30 minutes. So
31
good luck to you, mate.
minutes.
That can be your homework for tomorrow.
I feel duty bound to watch it, but I think with all the AEW stuff, I went, I think I'll leave that to the side, and it was just like, but in many ways, it delivers on ratings. That's the problem with this. What's the big takeaway they're going to take from it? More of this. Yeah, well, that's where they're going to go.
3 more weeks of Rock on SmackDown, isn't it? Or 2 more weeks of Rock on SmackDown after this one.
And he draws ratings, and also we were in the position of this, and this was the conversation I was having with like kind of wrestling dad at the football on Monday, which is normally where these conversations didn't talk about Revolution at all. It was like, Sting retired, he wanted to talk about Elimination Chamber. And I was like, bloody hell. Like I spent a few hours last week fucking chatting about Elimination Chamber, mate. I don't know.
Got to be said, by the way, like, fuck me. Like, was there even the bad matches on it? Revolution were better than anything at Elimination Chamber. Night and day. I said on the pre-show, WWE and AEW's products should be very different, but fuck me, the pay-per-view's very different right now. I guess, you know, WrestleMania, I'm sure, as with last year, it'll be good, but Jesus, blew that away.
Oh, you were in the chat. You seemed livid about it. I think I viewed it as the cynical exercise that it always was. It was just like how to fleece Australians. Like that's what this kind of felt like.
But it was bad. It was bad. That's all I'm saying. It was bad. Anyway.
But this is the thing. He's got a vested interest. He's got finance. He's got skin in the game for WWE to do well. We're going to see a lot more Rock. I know he's on these like 3 Smackdowns. We're going to see him sending in shit all of the time. This is going to be a regular thing. Like effectively, I'm not saying he is like the new Vince, but in many ways he is going to end up being that kind of like that face of the company from that perspective, but he's also immersed in the storylines, which means we'll end up obviously having to see some Triple H in there as well, because that's just there's no way he's going to fucking take that sort of shit lying down. He's going to be appearing to get his like kind of plaudits, but that's the problem. Delivers ratings that they want, which is at this stage, like that's all they care about.
For sure. But yeah, overall, like I say, I did for WWE nonsense. I enjoyed it. I'm interested in where they go, mainly because they don't seem to have had a clue. They fucking dragged this out, as Chris says in the chat there. Yeah, Cody and Seth are going to be on SmackDown this week to just confirm that there is a tag match going on that we've all known for about. There's been graphics for it for about 6 weeks. It feels like they're dragging it out. But yeah, it's overall working. Apart from when you give Seth Rollins the mic, because fuck me, was that Raw? What was it? The Diarrhea Dwayne promo. He did that fucking stuff. Honestly, if CM Punk was fit, I don't even know how the pieces would fit, but imagine him in that role. Imagine even they kept Sami Zayn over and to that level, and so it was last year's 2 men, you know, Cody and Sami coming back together again to take on the Bloodline, or even Jey Uso, dare I say? I guess he'll have something going on with Jimmy, but Seth isn't half an albatross on that feud. That Raw segment last night was rough.
I didn't see it. I heard Diarrhea Dwayne. Nope, don't need to see that at all on there. No. I will say this, in terms of the stipulation on the tag match, I'm kind of fine with that. For what it is, because it does, again, it feels like, okay, so we're going to get into like, you know, Rock will end up Rock or Roman will end up pinning Cody or whatever. I can see Drew McIntyre getting involved, and then Cody has to fight all the odds in the main event, and they'll do all manner of bells and whistles. And I'm kind of fine with that, because that's going to kind of come with WWE territory in this. So it's such a like kind of, you know, adding in the stipulation. At least they're going at least in what is in overall terms the right direction. And then I think SummerSlam Rock versus Cody feels like it's almost that's going to be another lock as well. If he stays, that's a big fucking if.
Complete sidebar, but I was watching the Rory and Mal podcast, used to be on the Joe Budden podcast, and for some reason they were talking about The Rock, and they were like, oh yeah, if you saw The Rock in a club, like, you know, you wouldn't, if he went after you girl, you wouldn't fight him, would you? And I was like, you guys definitely don't watch wrestling, because I feel like of the wrestlers, not to turn it to top dollar here, but of the wrestlers, I don't know, I feel like I fancy my chance against Dwayne. I know he's massive, but like I feel like he'd fall apart. Like I think he's got functional strength. That might be famous last words when Rock, you know, puts one fist in my face and murders me dead if we ever do happen to get ourselves into a scrap. Maybe he won't like one of my tweets. But he just feels like a man who's like, his muscles are going to fall off his bones if he tries to do anything too athletic. Like, I'm scared for him in that Mania match. I think a tag is the right move. Will he be available for a singles, or will he allow himself to do a singles? I'm not so sure. But hey, maybe that singles will be a shoot fight with me. We'll see. But yeah, last little bit of news stories we should get into. A little bit of Rev Pro news. Thought it was worth referencing, because I just thought they have a few cracking announcements this week. Did Rev Pro, and as Benno and JP, we are tastemakers, so we should talk some Rev Pro at all times. But yes, they do have a lot going on at the minute, and yeah, Revolution Rumble's coming up. A little bit disappointed it's on. I realised that 31st is Easter Sunday. Not sure I'm going to be able to make that one, unfortunately, lads. But Rumble itself, I'm excited for. So maybe I'll still find a way. Michael Oku, Leighton Buzzard, though, added to that show. Well built little story they've going on there. Looking at your call, feels like some proper booking from a proper wrestling company, I'd say, JP.
Dare I say, this kind of match makes you think of, okay, you're doing a Rumble, so your world title match can't be like your really big wrestler, but it's someone you want to establish in the role, don't you know, as well? So putting him in there with Leighton Buzzard makes sense. It's a defense he can win, but it puts Leighton Buzzard into a kind of a top line mix. I'm more than happy with that. So I really want to go with this show. But now you've mentioned Easter Sunday, I'm like, oh, God. That's
I know Andy Ogden's going like a weird route to end up at like London St. Pancras or something like that, or some other London station. Not ruling it out. Don't have great luck with the stuff, Rev Pro, but yeah, definitely want to get there, because I love your call, and I heard good, despite its faults, and I heard good things about that last your call show. But yeah, on that note, they have also announced for the same show, Grizzly Young Veterans are going to be going for the tag team titles, which presumably will be the Subculture team. So yeah, I think that's a really strong match added there as well. And on top of that, there's been a slew of announcements for FansticaMania UK coming up. Also at your hall show, JP. This one in May. Atlantis Junior and Atlantis, as seen on AEW Dynamite this week, are going to be on that show. Added to there's a slew of names. Like, it's proper CMLL. It's basically the cast of AEW Collision. This last few weeks is Hechicero has been announced. Your boy Magnus, again, not the other Magnus. This Magnus has been announced this week as well. A lot of names for that one. It feels like a very legitimate CMLL show. Mystico, but chief among them. There you go. That's your big draw, isn't it? Like, I know some people are very, very excited about this one.
I think there is, and do you know what? For this, again, I'm trying to think of this as like selling points to Vicky. Could we go to this? And then he's thinking, well, actually, this is the kind of show I feel like I could take the lads to one of these, whether it's only one of the shows, in like that, perhaps even the afternoon one, because I think that's the thing about this, is it doesn't feel like he's got stakes that there's some tournament going on, so it's going to be like going to the second one. But the idea of like what feels like an authentic kind of CMLL roster, that's definitely in the mix here. And I think, you know, even people like Stephanie Vaquer being on there, who is being kind of like spoken about in, you know, in several terms. She's headlining, I think, an Arena Mexico show they're doing for International Women's Day, or an Arena Coliseo show as well. Like, they're properly shipping out everyone for it and moving it away from that bloody disastrous taco festival, which was a disaster apart from these wrestling shows last year.
Wrestling sounds like it was the best thing there, yeah.
But what was the, I mean, there was the wrestling show that had run the Roundhouse and did kind of good numbers as well, because as we've said this before, probably on the When Worlds Collide, this is where lucha, the idea of it being an authentic lucha show, can work in the favor of getting much more in the way of like people who aren't Rev Pro fans or hardcore wrestling fans, but this feels like a bit more interesting, a bit more different, of like, oh, okay, these are kind of genuine lucha stars who are being booked by a proper wrestling company. And it's just that diversity of show that they're going for, getting their ducks in a row in terms of big shows as well. Because we mentioned, like, you know, got those Stevenage shows coming up with old Mike Santana. Got that Coventry debut, which is going to be a big deal for them. That's leading into the Rumble. Then we've got this coming up. We've got the anniversary show that's going to be on before All In. Like, they are, and as you know, we've seen the numbers, obviously the sellout they did for High Stakes as well. Like, very much a company that is on the up, and just like logically and sensibly a FansticaMania tour from just a commercial perspective, is really good. They can flog a fuck ton of masks. God knows if I'm there with the lads. They ended up getting masks at that bloody 4FW show. Like they were like a $5 each. Like something along those lines. Vicky felt like she had to get them as well. It's like, yeah. Like, so it feels like they would definitely like kind of come along to that. And I think like that earlier show, I could see myself going to it.
Yeah, like say two show day, isn't it, as well? So you get
Yeah.
get your day out of it as well, which I believe the last one was too. So yeah, I'll be at York Hall for one of these shows. I don't know which.
Yeah.
But at least one. I'm definitely gonna try and make the trip. We'll see what I can make work for the Revolution Rumble. But on that note, JP, how's you been watching? I know our other review section's a bit dry this week. Not much else going on, is there really? We didn't have much on the weekend show. We've got a fair bit this weekend. We'll be previewing Carrot. I believe TNA have got one of their many shows coming up this weekend. Yeah. There's a lot of a lot of bits and pieces going on this weekend, but yeah, hasn't been too much this last week.
I think this is this last week there isn't, and normally when there's an AEW show that kind of takes over very much in there. What I am intrigued you mentioned about Carrot is the fact that Carrot's going to be on live. They're going to be able to watch it, and I'm very tempted to get it in just to be able to see it. I always want to I miss it. I miss WXW. I loved those weekends.
You miss getting Daisuke a pint. Pull a full circle.
I do miss getting Daisuke a pint. I won't lie. But just in general, like just the atmosphere, just when you went into that feeling of going into the Turban Halla first of all and going, nah, this is like European wrestling being done production wise on a spectacle that I hadn't seen before, and it was being done fucking properly. So I always kind of want them to do well as well at the same time. So the idea of them doing it live, German commentary, I'm fine with. Like I don't have any kind of like issue on that front. There is this TNA sacrifice that's on there. There's some New Japan Cup, but I think I learned my lesson from the last set of New Japan shows of I couldn't really give a shit. So, that's where I kind of at. Whether it's their 52nd anniversary event or the New Japan Cup, I might watch it at the fucking business end of it as well. But yeah, in many ways for me, I think that the I'm very tempted to get WXW now. I'll let you know if I do. Like, I think it might be worth that. Kind of it. If there's a point where I want to dip back into it, this feels like it. And the fact I can watch it from the comfort of my own home, I'm kind of happy with that.
Yeah. Won't be the same as Oberhausen, but yeah, good to be given the option. But yeah, on New Japan, I'll just quote Garrett last week. New Japan, who cares?
Yeah,
the man was not wrong. But yeah, hopefully we'll have Gareth on soon as well. If anyone was looking forward to having him on this show, we apologise. Gareth, if anything could have been done, he would have been here. He did his absolute best. But no, I think we held the fort there, JP. Obviously, yeah, we'll be back next week for more fun. Weekend show on Friday, and of course, we will have the big Sting show coming up. And if you haven't listened to it yet, the Cody show is out there too for your AEW history. Anything else, JP, going on?
No, that's it. Go to patreon.com/grapple, youtube.com/@grapple as well. And we've got a great mix of shows coming up for the March for the March schedule as well.
Retro as well. To throw that
yeah, new retro in the mix as well. I think we're going to be doing another Power Slam that. Because you,
that what we're going with. Pin this. I don't know. We'd come up with something.
We need to. I need to find an interview where I can replace just Dave Meltzer on the intro to that with like little sound snippets of Finn Martin saying "Observe this, brother." Somehow, I've got to try and find those. That might mean a little bit of fair amount of audio listening on my part. But yeah, we've got those shows coming up. I'm so looking forward to that Sting mixtape. But I can see it already becoming a kind of a monster at the same time, just like a behemoth of a show. The sickos list is going to be a proper sickos list.
While we've been recording, match has been getting added to that, so it's going to be long. But main mixtape a little bit more manageable. So yeah, look forward to that in all the usual places. If you're not a member of our Discord, you can join for free. Join the conversation as we put that all together. But yeah, on that note, we'll catch you patrons at the weekend, and everyone else, we will catch you for another spotlight next week. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.